Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Lord of Hell. Chapter 61. Who are you? Why did you let Hulk run away, and why didn't you take action before? Seeing that the soldiers did not move, General Ross was a little annoyed. He walked up to Andrew and asked loudly. Andrew glanced at General Ross with contempt. General Ross screamed, raised his head and fell down with blood spurting out. A small curse. General Ross will keep vomiting blood for a while. I believe he will get used to it if he vomits and vomits. General Ross suddenly fell down, and the soldiers subconsciously raised their guns towards Andrew. Andrew glanced at them, and they put down their guns in horror. What a joke, this is the super boss who beat up the Hulk. Your general is not in good health. Remember to take him to see a doctor. Andrew snorted coldly, turned around and walked towards the building next to him. Mr. Wang's temper is as bad as ever. Natasha had a headache. She thought for a while and said to Professor Charles, "Professor, can you modify everyone's memory and extract Mr. Wang from the incident where General Ross vomited blood and fell into coma? I will not modify other people's memories unless necessary. Moreover, General Ross vomited blood on his own and has nothing to do with Mr. Wang." Professor Charles refused. Although he had godlike power, he never abused it. He knew very well that abusing power would only lead to him becoming a devil. The problem with Professor Charles is actually this. He is a saint, but as the saying goes, an honest official is more evil than a corrupt official. General Ross won't be so unreasonable. Forget it, leave it to Director Fury. Natasha shook her head. She didn't want to see the scene of the Ghost Rider fighting the American army. Then, the whole of New York would be set on fire. At this time, Andrew passed by Norman. He glanced at Norman and smiled. "Mr. Osborn, do you want to be like Iron Man?" Norman was a little embarrassed. He took off his helmet and said, "No, I was just experimenting with the product." "Mr. Wang, I didn't expect you to be so powerful. It's just a little bit of effort." Andrew said, "Norman wants to curse, do you know how to curse?" Norman thought of something and asked hurriedly, "Mr. Wang, your Bugle Daily will not report what happened today, right?" Andrew said, "Of course it will, but don't worry, I won't report your part." "Thank you." Norman breathed a sigh of relief, thought for a while, pointed to the aircraft next to him and said, "Mr. Wang, if you are interested, I can sell you an aircraft at the cost price. Of course, there are no weapons on it." Andrew glanced at the aircraft and refused. "No, I'm not interested in it. It's not environmentally friendly." "Not environmentally friendly?" Norman was shocked. "Such a powerful aircraft, you actually rejected it because it is not environmentally friendly." Andrew didn't say much, turned around and left. It was just an aircraft. With the arc reactor here, Howard could build it in minutes. What's more, Norman's flying machine is so ugly that his son Harry's Green Goblin skateboard would be just as good. Ignorance. Norman looked unhappy. He thought of something and called the cameraman over, only to find that all the data in the camera had disappeared. He was so angry that he cursed. Andrew returned to the building, and Gwen came over and said with a dissatisfied look, "Why are you touching Spider-Woman's head? Are you familiar with her?" Andrew couldn't help but smile and pinch Gwen's face, feeling jealous. This girl is so cute. Gwen was a little embarrassed and angry. Just as she was about to say something, Andrew took her hand and said, "Let's go to Dr. Otto. I hope he is not scared." After hearing this, Gwen immediately forgot what happened before and took Andrew to the teaching building. She respected Dr. Otto very much, and he was an idealistic person. He had always wanted to create unlimited energy and make the world unified. Seeing Andrew leave, Natasha shook her head. Working with the military to deal with the aftermath was really a piece of cake. The American military was completely unreliable. Half an hour later, in a certain cave, Hulk roared to the sky in pain and gradually transformed into Dr. Banner. Then, Dr. Banner collapsed weakly on the ground. Betty hurriedly went up and hugged Dr. Banner, comforting, "Bruce, it's okay, it's okay." Dr. Banner smiled bitterly at Betty, and then the two cuddled together in the cave, full of confusion and despair about the future. At this moment, Dr. Banner's eyes dazzled and he appeared on a floating platform. He was wondering when he found Hulk standing next to him and backed away in fright. Hulk was also confused. At this time, when he saw Dr. Banner, he immediately clenched his fists and prepared to beat him. Although he didn't know what the situation was, he had long been unhappy with Dr. Banner. Stop first, don't be impatient. Andrew in flame form said. Hulk sensed the familiar aura, deep fear flashed in his eyes, and he sat there honestly. Seeing Hulk being so obedient, Dr. Banner was a little surprised. He swallowed and asked Andrew, "Who are you?" "I am the Demon King of Hell." Andrew said. "Dr. Banner, I am here to make a deal with you. If you agree, you will get rid of the Hulk completely." Hulk growled in dissatisfaction. Andrew glanced at him, and he shut up immediately. "Hell demon, that's not scientific." "Well, it's not scientific here either." Dr. Banner thought for a moment and said, "What price do I need to pay to get rid of the Hulk completely?" "It's simple, the soul after death." Andrew smiled and said, "As long as you are willing to sign a contract and give me your soul after death, I will take action to separate you and Hulk. When the time comes, you will be you and Hulk will be Hulk." "Separate." Dr. Banner glanced at Hulk and gritted his teeth and said, "Can Hulk be completely eliminated? If so, I am willing to give up my soul after death. Anyway, I will definitely not be able to go to heaven." Hulk was furious when he heard this, and immediately rushed towards Dr. Banner. Andrew waved his hand, and Hulk stopped in place, unable to move. Then, Andrew said to Dr. Banner, "Dr. Banner, you still don't want to admit that Hulk is a part of you. I can destroy Hulk, but I won't do that because I want to invite Hulk to do it for me. Work. Of course, if you are willing, I would also like to invite you. After all, you are a super genius, although you have no scientific research achievements." Quote. You don't have to say the last half of the sentence. Dr. Banner was a little worried. He looked at Andrew and said, "I really want to get rid of the Hulk, but I'm worried that you will use the Hulk to do evil. Believe me, if I'm going to do evil, it doesn't matter if I do it with or without the Hulk." Andrew laughed. Banner hesitated and said, "I can sign a contract, but the contract must include the clause that the Hulk cannot be used to do evil. Add an attributive. Hulk cannot be used to do evil on a large scale, otherwise the scope will be too wide." Andrew said, "It would be considered evil if I let Hulk walk around the streets, because it would scare a lot of people." Dr. Banner couldn't help laughing, and Hulk said angrily, "Hulk, I'm very angry. Sign it." Andrew waved his hand, and a contract appeared in front of Dr. Banner. He read it carefully and pressed his fingerprint. "Hulk, you finally have to get out of here. I can finally get rid of you." Dr. Banner looked at Hulk and said with relief, "If it weren't for Hulk, how could he change from a great scientist to a wanted criminal who could only hide in Tibet?" Dr. Banner hates Hulk extremely in his heart, which is why he has been unwilling to admit that Hulk is a part of him. Hulk looked at Dr. Banner angrily. "Without me, you would have died long ago, weakling." "Good," Andrew said. "Next, I will take a tube of blood from you, and then purify this tube of blood and turn it back into normal blood. After that, I will use this tube of blood to recast your body. When the body is recast, I will split your soul into two, one part is Hulk, and the other part is you." Quote. Dr. Banner was a little shocked. "I want to leave my body." Hulk laughed. "You are the one who wants to get out. It's more convenient this way." Andrew smiled and waved his hand, and Dr. Banner's consciousness was sent back to his body. Dr. Banner opened his eyes and found that Betty had fainted at some point, and at the same time, a ball of flame stood in front of him. "Here we go." Andrew clapped his hands, and a large number of magic runes appeared on the ground. Then, these magic runes formed a mysterious magic array. A large amount of magic energy emerged from the array, filling the surrounding area with a strange and burning atmosphere, as if he was in hell. Dr. Banner was trembling a little. Just as he was about to say something, Andrew pulled out a ball of red blood from his body. Then, Andrew's hand shook, and the red blood turned into violent green blood, as if he would jump up and hit someone at any time. Andrew smiled slightly, and a large amount of magic power was injected into the green blood in the form of runes. The green blood was quickly purified and turned back into red blood. Body recasting. Then, Andrew sent the blood into the magic circle. The magic circle glowed with black light, and the blood quickly swelled and turned into a complete human blood vein. Such a huge fluctuation in magic power was immediately noticed by the Karmatage New York Temple. The temple master Daniel was preparing to lead the mages to suppress the demons. A portal appeared in front of them. Immediately afterwards, Cassius emerged from the portal, walked out. Cassius said, Master Daniel, the teacher said, don't pay attention to this matter. Master Daniel asked in confusion, why? This is obviously the magic wave of hell. Because he is not an enemy. Cassius didn't say much. He looked at the direction of the magic burst with a very hot expression. In the cave, Dr. Banner looked at the gradually forming body and kept muttering to himself, this is not scientific, this is not scientific. Andrew asked Dr. Banner, how old do you want your body to be? Is this okay? 18 years old, forget it, let's stick to the current age. Dr. Banner glanced at the unconscious Betty and said a little awkwardly that he didn't want to lose his girlfriend because of his age. Good. With a press of Andrew's hand, Dr. Banner's copy was completely formed and floating in the air naked. It is worth mentioning that although this body is the same age as the original body, it looks obviously younger than the original body. Dr. Banner has suffered so much that he looks much older than he is. Then comes the soul. Andrew grabbed Dr. Banner's soul from the air. Then, with a wave of his hand, the soul was split into two, and the consciousnesses of Banner and Hulk were completely separated. When I make deals, I always deliver the goods at a genuine price. If you meet me, I will tell you your fortune. Andrew took out 2 soul gold coins, extracted the soul essence and sent it into the souls of Banner and Hulk. The 2 incomplete souls quickly recovered. Without this step, the 2 of them would be weak for a long time, and their souls would not be easily restored. Finally, Andrew sent the souls of Dr. Banner and Hulk into their bodies respectively. Dr. Banner fell to the ground with a thud, and Hulk turned into the Hulk form. Then, Hulk opened his eyes and growled excitedly. He was finally free, completely free. Andrew asked Hulk, Hulk, are you interested in working for me? Hell, I will not let you down. Hulk hesitated and asked, can you fight every day? Andrew smiled and said, Hulk, you are not a beast. Your life should not only be about fighting. Hulk said, Hulk, angry, wants to fight. Andrew said, the reason why you are so angry all the time is because you have been out for too short a time. Don't worry, you will have plenty of time to learn how to behave. Hulk said, you are super powerful, Hulk, I am willing to follow you. Very good. Andrew nodded with satisfaction. He was about to send Hulk back to the hell of rebirth. At this moment, Ancient One's voice sounded in his ears, if you can, leave a tube of Hulk's blood for Dr. Banner. He will need it. Okay. Andrew thought for a while, but did not refuse. Then, he placed a tube of Hulk's blood in Dr. Banner's hand and said, put it away and don't throw it away. After injecting this tube of angry blood, you will become the Force again. Infinity, the invulnerable Hulk. Andrew used suggestive magic in this sentence, and Dr. Banner subconsciously grabbed the syringe. Unless something unexpected happened, he would not abandon this tube of blood. Hulk said contemptuously from the side, weak chicken. Even if he changes back to the Hulk, he will never be as powerful as before. More importantly, he will lose the ability to become more powerful the angrier he gets. Simply put, he is a shrunken product. Andrew shook his head and sent Hulk to the hell of rebirth, where Master Mimicry was already waiting. When she saw Hulk, she said coldly, the Demon King appointed me to be your guide. Come with me and I will show you around. Visit the hell of rebirth. Seeing that Taskmaster was not afraid of him, Hulk was a little happy and followed Taskmaster like a big child. Hulk is just a kid, well, a naughty kid. The Demon King shook his head. Next, he will turn Hulk into the Vanguard General who will be reborn in hell. After a while, Dr. Banner woke up in the cave. He felt the Hulk completely leaving and couldn't help crying, tears of joy. Betty was awakened by Dr. Banner's cry. She looked at Dr. Banner with a look of astonishment on her face. Why was he not wearing clothes? Also, where did he get the whitening and rejuvenation surgery and he became so white and young? Can you give me a phone number? In the hospital, General Ross pointed in the direction of the ward and roared at Norman, is this what you call success? Norman Osborn, your human enhancement potion failed. In the ward, 5 enhanced soldiers were lying unconscious, and the remaining one was already dead. Just as Norman was about to answer, General Ross suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Norman's face was covered in blood and he quickly stepped back. General Ross was very surprised that he was vomiting blood again. He turned to the doctor and roared, what's going on? Didn't you say I'm fine? Why are you vomiting blood again? The doctor tremblingly replied, I don't know what's going on. Your body is indeed fine and healthy. General Ross grabbed the doctor's collar and said angrily, are you trying to tell me that a healthy person vomits blood several times a day? Let's check it again and I'll arrange the equipment. The doctor screamed, and General Ross let him go and shouted, why don't you go quickly? Norman wiped the blood on his face and said coldly, you keep vomiting blood, maybe it has something to do with Andrew Wong. Andrew Wong, I will go find him after I finish dealing with Banner. General Ross said very fearfully, and then he asked Norman again, Norman, your potion failed, how did you promise me in the first place? I didn't fail. They only completed the first stage of strengthening, and my potion still has the second stage. Norman defended. I will inject them with the second stage medicine right away, and they will be back to their best condition soon. It better be so. General Ross snorted coldly. He thought for a while and ordered to the soldiers beside him, contact SHIELD and ask them to monitor the flow of information on the internet. Banner came to New York to find a doctor named Mr. Lan. Monitoring the two keywords Mr. Blue and Mr. Green, I want to find Banner in the shortest possible time. In addition, I want to warn SHIELD that this time, our military will take the lead. Quote, SHIELD is an agency affiliated with the United Nations. This is the United States, and the military's brand is stronger than SHIELD. The soldier immediately responded, yes. Norman said, I was not prepared this time. I will definitely be able to catch Banner next time. What Andrew Wong can do, I, Norman Osborn, can do the same. General Ross glanced at Norman and snorted, anyone can tell lies, I only look at the facts. A few days later, in the early morning, Tony Stark was awkwardly preparing breakfast at the Malibu villa. He had not been out for a long time. The reason why I didn't go out was partly because I was researching new elements and new suits, and partly because I didn't want to go out. The last time I was hung on a tower, it was really embarrassing. As we all know, Tony Stark valued his face more than his life. Still important. Andrew King. Tony muttered Andrew's name, his eyes full of fighting spirit. In a few months, he had found out the identity of Andrew Wong and knew that he was the Ghost Rider who was so cool that he had no friends. Tony could not forget the contemptuous look in his eyes, nor could he forget the newspaper's remarks that he was far inferior to Ghost Rider. He wanted to prove to everyone that he was more powerful than Ghost Rider. This was why he had been studying the suit for the past few months. One of the reasons. Throughout his life, Tony was no weaker than anyone else. At this time, the artificial intelligence Jarvis reminded, Mr. Stark, tonight you have to attend the opening ceremony of the Stark Industry Expo. I remember, Tony said. Send me an invitation letter to Andrew Wong. I want to talk to him about the acquisition of the space station, and by the way, let him see my charming style. Jarvis said, yes, Mr. Stark. Pepper came out of the bedroom. When she saw Tony, she was happy at first, and then said sarcastically, who are you? Am I not the only one who lives in this house? Tony knew that he had neglected Pepper during this period, and said hurriedly, Pepper, I prepared breakfast specially for you. Pepper glanced at the strawberry bread on the table and was speechless. She complained, do you know that I'm only allergic to one thing in the whole world? Tony was immediately embarrassed and hurriedly threw away the strawberry bread. Tony, I have something serious to tell you. Pepper didn't bother to argue. After all, this was the man she had chosen. No matter how bad things went, she had to grit her teeth and hold on. She said, since you became Iron Man, the military has been using various methods to force you to hand over the iron suit. Tony snorted coldly. They are dreaming, I will never hand over the steel suit. Pepper, you don't have to persuade me. I don't intend to persuade you. Just because you don't understand me doesn't mean I don't understand you. Pepper said, the problem is that in the past month, they have suddenly stopped moving and even cancelled hearings. This is obviously a problem. Tony's eyes narrowed and he asked, you mean, they got the suit from other places? For example, Obadiah. Pepper shook his head and said, no, according to the information Rhodes gave me, the military has been in frequent contact with Hammer Industries recently. Hammer Industries. Pepper, I didn't expect you to tell jokes. Tony laughed. Hammer Industries made its fortune by copying the arms of the Stark Group. The Stark Group has at least hundreds of patent lawsuits going on with them. With the scientific research capabilities of Hammer Industries, there is only one possibility to replicate the steel suit. Humanity is about to be destroyed. Pepper said. I'm not kidding, Hammer Industries is also participating in the Expo this time, you have to be careful. Don't worry, Hammer Industries is nothing. Tony didn't take Hammer Industries seriously at all. Pepper shook his head and went to the bathroom to wash up. At this time, Jarvis prompted, Mr. Stark, Mr. Fury is calling. Tony said, it seems trouble is coming, come in. Soon, the one-eyed Nick Fury appeared in the holographic projection and said, Tony, there may be a catastrophe in Manhattan recently. While talking, Nick Fury sent information about the Hulk to Tony. Tony was not frightened, but was a little excited. What a big guy. I can use it to test my new suit. Don't underestimate the enemy. He is very dangerous. I will ask Logan and Barton to come back to help you. Nick Fury said that Logan was in Canada looking for memories while Barton was at home on vacation. Tony said with high spirits, don't worry, I won't be careless. I will prove to everyone that the patron saint of New York is not the Ghost Rider, but me, Iron Man, Tony Stark. After hearing this, Nick Fury silently removed the information that Andrew Wong beat the Hulk violently, so as not to hurt Tony Stark. At night, Stark Industries Expo in Flushing, Queens, New York. While flipping through the catalog, Andrew asked Howard, I heard that Tony opened the expo in memory of you. Are you very touched? What's so exciting? If you hadn't brought me here, boss, I wouldn't have come. My artificial intelligence is almost complete. Howard said with disdain, and Andrew smiled, then let's go back. It's a waste of time anyway. We don't even have a hover car. It's a failure. Howard hurriedly stopped Andrew. No, you're here, just take a look. Andrew looked at Howard with a half smile. Howard was a little embarrassed and quickly changed the subject. After all these years, the hover car has still not been invented. It is indeed a failure. Decades ago, I exhibited a semi-finished product. Yes, a semi-finished product that floats for a few seconds and then falls down. Andrew complained. At this time, there was a burst of cheers from the middle of the venue, but it was Iron Man flying towards this direction. Andrew shook his head. Your son is as pushy as ever. Howard pretended to say, you are a shameless person. You haven't learned my low-key and restrained ways at all. Andrew said contemptuously, are you sure you have that thing? During the joking, Tony Stark's figure appeared above the stage, and everyone cheered louder. Tony smiled proudly and prepared to land like a superhero. At this moment, a whip full of electricity swung from below and wrapped around Tony's calf. Before Tony could react, the electric whip was pulled hard, and Tony was thrown heavily onto the booth. The booth made of steel frame was smashed into a big crater on the spot, and a group of beauties dressed as Iron Man stepped back in fright. Then, the whip was retracted, and a tall and rough gray suit holding two electric whips flew out from behind the curtain. Ah! Seeing that the expo suddenly turned into a battlefield, everyone hurriedly backed away. However, many people did not leave. They gathered around and took videos with their mobile phones while watching the excitement, such as Andrew and Howard. At this time, Ivan in the gray suit shouted to Tony on the booth, Tony Stark, you Stark family are all thieves, and the Vanke family is here for revenge. Vanke. Howard was stunned when he heard this. It was actually the son of an old friend who came to seek revenge on Tony. The Vanke family. Never heard of it. Also, you are the thief. You stole my arc reactor. Tony flew up, raised his left hand and prepared to fire the pulse cannon at Ivan. Ivan hit Tony's palm with an electric whip, and the muzzle exploded with a pop, sending out a lot of sparks. The arc reactor belongs to our Vanke family. Ivan shouted loudly and swung the electric whip towards Tony. Tony did not dare to hit him hard and flew to the side to avoid it. The booth was split into two by the whip, and the fracture was red. My opening ceremony. Tony was very dissatisfied, and two micro-missiles flew out from behind and shot at Ivan. Ivan waved his whip and exploded the micro-missiles. Tony took the opportunity to rush towards Ivan quickly, and Ivan knocked him away with his backhand. Then, he waved his whip and wrapped around Tony, and Tony's control panel fluctuated with electricity. Come here. Ivan smiled ferociously, retracted the whip, and Tony flew towards Ivan involuntarily. Ivan punched him in the face, sending him flying again. Then, Ivan repeated his old trick and pulled Tony over again. Tony accelerated halfway, threw Ivan to the ground with a bang, and smashed Ivan's faceplate with his fist. Ivan took a few punches and knocked Tony over with force. Then he got up and whipped Tony hard. Tony rolled to avoid it, and a large number of induced bombs flew out from behind and exploded on Ivan's face mask, causing Ivan to lose sight immediately. Tony took the opportunity to pounce on Ivan. Ivan whipped his whip and tied Tony tightly. Due to the influence of the current, Tony's system gradually became unstable. "Tony Stark, your end has come," Ivan shouted and controlled 2 missiles to shoot out from his shoulders. Tony's expression changed. He clenched his fists and hesitated. There is a recently developed laser device on the back of Tony's hand. It is so powerful that it can even cut through steel suits. The problem is that there are too many onlookers around, and it is very likely that the laser will accidentally injure him. Just when Tony hesitated, a black suit rushed out, knocking Ivan away and rolling on the ground. However, Howard saw that his son was in danger and couldn't help but take action. "This is the classic beating of my son." Andrew complained that, speaking of it, Ivan's life experience is quite similar to that of the protagonist in the novel. Unfortunately, he only has the life of a villain and not the life of a protagonist. Tony saw the black suit and asked unhappily, "How on earth did you get in? Didn't the Stark Group's security guards go to work?" "Young man from the Vanke family, the arc reactor was jointly developed by your father and Howard Stark." Howard ignored Tony and shouted to Ivan, who got up, "Also, Howard did not betray your father. He drove him away back then to protect him." "Protect him? Do you know how my father died? He died of poverty. He was sick and had no money for medical treatment. He died of poverty." Ivan shouted angrily. "This is all because of the Stark family, and I want them to pay the price. Isn't it your own responsibility that your father is sick and has no money for medical treatment? You can develop a steel suit and an arc reactor, but is it difficult to earn money to buy medicine?" Tony shouted. "I don't know about the grudges of the previous generation, I only know that you are a waste. It's all your Stark family's fault." Ivan was speechless. He roared and prepared to attack again. At this moment, Obadiah's roar came from the communication channel. "Ivan, you lunatic, leave quickly." Ivan cursed, took out a bomb from his waist and threw it at the crowd. Then, he flew straight into the sky and fled away. Upon seeing this, Tony hurriedly rushed towards the bomb, and then he threw the bomb into the sky with great force, and the bomb exploded with a bang in the sky. Tony breathed a sigh of relief. He turned around and found that the black suit had disappeared. He immediately cursed in annoyance, "Is this guy a ghost? So elusive." Next, it was natural to clean up the mess. A large number of reporters came over to interview Tony. Tony ignored them and walked towards Andrew, who was about to leave. Tony was a little embarrassed when he saw Andrew. After all, he had planned to show off in front of him, but he was beaten around. Tony said straight to the point, "Mr. Wong, who is good at making fire and kung fu, I want to buy the small space station of your rebirth group." "Okay, I'll let Susan talk to you about the specific price." However, when Dr. Reed goes to the space station, 2 people from the rebirth group will accompany him, and we have a small experiment to do. Andrew nodded. It was time to make some extra money, and annexing Hammer Industries would require a lot of capital. In addition, Andrew has no interest in the space station. When the time comes, he will establish bases on the Moon and Mars. Anyway, robots are not afraid of harsh environments. Tony didn't object. He nodded and said, "No problem." After discussing the business, Andrew was not interested in staying any longer and turned around to leave with Howard. Tony looked unhappy. "Why don't you mock me a few times, completely ignoring me like this? I'm very hurt, you know." Ignoring it means that the other party doesn't take you seriously at all. At this time, a fat man came running towards us while wiping his sweat. Tony, who was so angry and had no place to vent his anger, saw him and immediately shouted, "Happy, let's talk about today's security issues." After giving Happy a lesson, Tony left the aftermath to the omnipotent Pepper and returned home to investigate the Vanke family's intelligence. "The arc reactor was developed by my father and Anton Vanke." Tony frowned. There was no doubt that the previous attacker was Anton Vanko's son, Ivan Vanko. After thinking about it, Tony called his good friend Rod and asked him to help investigate Ivan Vanke and Hammer Industries. His intuition told him that there was a connection between them. Rhodes was somewhat silent when he received the call. After a moment, he said, "Tony, I shouldn't tell you this, but you are my good friend and I can't hide it from you. The military chose me to be the driver of a new suit produced by Hammer Industries. In fact, I am now at Hammer Industries' warehouse in Flushing, and Hammer is preparing to display the new suit at the Expo." Quote. Tony was speechless. He cursed, "You traitor. I am a soldier and I must obey orders from above." Rhodes said, "Tony, if you don't want to hand over the suit to the military will definitely have to find another collaborator. The military has done nothing wrong in this matter. You did nothing wrong. Ivan Vanke is not a good person. You have all been taken advantage of by him." Tony snorted and said, "Rod, this matter may cause a huge disaster. You must help me investigate." Rhodes hesitated and said, "Okay, I'll check it for you, Tony. This matter is very sensitive. Don't act rashly. Wait for my call." As much as possible, Tony put down the phone unhappily, and then he got up to repair his suit. No matter how many other suits were out there, Tony Stark firmly believed that his suit was the best. Because this suit was created by him, Tony Stark. In the Flushing warehouse of Hammer Industries, Justin Hammer, wearing glasses and looking like a gentle scum, roared at Ivan, "You idiot, madman, who asked you to attack Tony Stark?" "Of course it's me, can it be you?" Ivan sneered and fed the parrot in the cage without caring. Hammer was so angry that he almost went crazy. Obadiah smoothed things over and said, "Hammer, don't be angry. At least Ivan has proven that he is more powerful than Tony Stark. I believe the military will not care about this." Quote. In fact, Obadiah is also dissatisfied with Ivan's arbitrary assertions, but he is often with Tony Stark and has long been accustomed to this kind of nonsense. "This kind of thing must never happen again. You are not allowed to leave here before the Expo. In addition, I will change the password of the suit. You can no longer use the suit without my consent." Hammer snorted and left angrily. When he left, Ivan and Obadiah both smiled disdainfully. Change password. How stupid can someone think that changing their password is useful? "Ivan, you are too impulsive today." Obadiah said to Ivan, "Tony Stark is not stupid. If you alert the enemy this time, he will definitely find that there is a problem with Hammer Industries. In other words, our original plan cannot be used. Without that black suit, I would have killed Tony Stark." Ivan didn't think he was wrong. He said, "Since we have alerted the enemy, we will take action in advance. You, me, the military's war machines, plus 30 unmanned suits provided by Hammer Industries, will definitely be able to defeat the enemy. Could kill Tony Stark." Obadiah sighed and said, "We can only take action in advance." Thinking of something, Ivan asked, "By the way, have you transported the extra batch of arc reactors we made?" During this time, Obadiah and Ivan not only used the production line of Hammer Industries to complete their own suits, but also secretly manufactured an additional batch of arc reactors. The money for these arc reactors was paid by Obadiah. Ivan didn't ask where the money came from because he didn't care. He only had one purpose, which was to kill Tony Stark. Of course, Ivan will definitely take precautions. He is never stupid. Already shipped. Obadiah didn't say much. He said, "Ivan, don't be impulsive this time, follow my command, we will find an opportunity to lure Tony over, and then send him on his way." After saying that, Obadiah glanced at Ivan, and a cold light flashed deep in his eyes. "After Tony dies, it will be your turn." Obadiah had no intention of subduing Ivan, because he couldn't subdue him. This guy's temper was worse than Tony's, and he didn't want to serve a second master. "After taking care of Tony, I will capture Ivan and give it to the organization. This gift is enough for me to gain a foothold within the organization." Thinking of the organization he joined, Obadiah felt hot in his heart. His previous vision was too short-sighted. Being rich was not enough, and he had to rule the world. "Up to you," Ivan replied casually. At this time, through the surveillance, he saw a person sneaking into the warehouse, and he immediately smiled. "I think our opportunity has come." After getting rid of the Hulk, Dr. Banner and Betty lived a happy life for a few days. Dr. Banner, who would never transform again, felt that the world was infinitely beautiful and completely different from before. I hope I never see the Hulk again in this life. Dr. Banner thought to himself. Betty leaned on him and said, Banner, let's leave New York and find a small country to live in. I think so too, but we still have something to solve. Dr. Banner said, I once sent a tube of blood to Mr. Lan. I want to go find him and destroy the tube of blood. In addition, Mr. Lan may be able to develop an antidote to restrain Hulk. I am a little worried about Hulk. K will cause big things in the future. Betty asked curiously, who took Hulk away? Cannot say. Dr. Banner shook his head and said, after we finish this, we will go to find a small place to live abroad. Betty, will you marry me? Betty cried with joy. I have been waiting for this sentence for 5 years. Dr. Banner hugged Betty and vowed in his heart that he would not let this woman down. Then, Dr. Banner disguised himself and went to the library, where he used a public computer to send an email to Mr. Lan and arranged a meeting with him. Dr. Banner didn't know that because his email contained the words, Mr. Blue, and Mr. Green, it was monitored by S.H.I.E.L.D., and General Ross locked the location and true identity of Mr. Blue. Dr. Samuel Stern, Department of Cellular Life, Grayburn College, Manhattan. Go to Grayburn College immediately. General Ross shouted excitedly. Norman, and the 5 enhanced people headed by Bronsky, who had recovered after the second phase of the experiment, nodded at the same time. Bronsky and the others were excited and finally had a chance to take revenge. Norman keenly noticed that Bronsky and others were in an unusually high mood. He frowned secretly. Could it be that his potion failed again? Set off. General Ross shouted, as S.H.I.E.L.D. The military is unreliable. There may be big trouble this time. We must be prepared. Natasha said to Wolverine Logan and Hawkeye Barton, who came to support them. In addition to the 3 of them, there was also a complete S.H.I.E.L.D. team. As long as the opponent is not Magneto, there is nothing to be afraid of. Logan said arrogantly while holding a cigar, and Barton asked, what if it's Andrew King? The weather is nice today. Logan looked out the window and said with an expression of appreciation of the night view. Natasha and Barton looked at the dark clouds in the sky with expressions of contempt. Barton thought of something and asked, Cortana, where is Tony? Why didn't he come? Natasha said, he is repairing his suit. He will come over in a while. Let's go first. On the roof of the Rebirth building, Andrew drank tea slowly, waiting for the drama to begin. Howard and Frank sat beside him to accompany him. Howard asked, Boss, are you waiting for trouble at Hammer Industries? Are you worried about Tony? Andrew smiled and said, there will be trouble over there, but it's not as big as here in Manhattan. The main event is here. After speaking, Andrew snapped his fingers, and 2 light curtains appeared in front of him. One was the warehouse of Hammer Industries, and the other was inside Grayburn College. Howard exclaimed, there's chaos in Manhattan too. Wow, how long has New York just been peaceful? Frank was also very shocked. He called his family and asked them not to go out at night. To be honest, he was seriously considering moving now. New York is a place with good feng shui, a large number of talented people, and simple folk customs. Andrew thought of something and said to Frank, by the way, Frank, during this time you go to participate in astronaut training. In a month, you and Susan will go to the space station together. To the space station. Frank was very puzzled. He was not a professional astronaut. You'll know then. Andrew didn't say much. He wanted Frank to take advantage of the adventure. When the cosmic storm comes, there is a high probability that people in the space station will gain supernatural powers. The reason why more people are not sent up is, on the one hand, the limited capacity of the space shuttle, and on the other hand, Andrew has some ideas about cosmic storms, which will be discussed in detail later. That's okay. Frank didn't ask any more questions. Anyway, the boss would not treat him badly. If he accumulated more merit, his family could live a long life. At this time, in the light curtain, military vehicles drove into Grayburn College in a hurry. Both Howard and Frank knew that the drama had begun. In the college, Dr. Banner was very glad that he came here. The reason was very simple. The tube of blood he sent to Dr. Stern was copied in large quantities by Dr. Stern using a special method and spread all over the room. To be honest, Dr. Banner's face turned pale when he saw the blood. Is this because he thinks the world is not chaotic enough? The blood sample you gave me was too small to do the experiment, so I replicated it using a concentration method to create a large number of new samples. Dr. Stern did not know what Dr. Banner was thinking. He was very proud of his masterpiece. Although their concentration is not high, they are very useful. Mr. Green, studying them will allow us to win the Nobel Prize. Dr. Stern was excited when he thought about the upcoming fame and fortune. Unfortunately, Dr. Banner poured cold water on him. No, these must all be destroyed. They are too dangerous and cannot be kept. Dr. Stern was somewhat reluctant. Gamma technology has great prospects. These things can help us treat hundreds of diseases. Those people would just make weapons out of them. Dr. Banner was arguing with Dr. Stern when an anesthesia needle shot him in the back. He fell weakly. Betty rushed over to help him, but was pushed to the ground by Bronsky, who rushed in. Then, Bronsky grabbed Dr. Banner's shoulder and shouted frantically, "Let him come out quickly, I want to see him." Betty shouted, "The Hulk is gone and Bruce is just a regular guy now." What? Blonsky, the other enhanced men, Norman who came over, General Ross, and the SHIELD agents nearby were all dumbfounded. Our pants were, ahem, we have made so many preparations and used so many people. Now you tell us that Hulk has left. Are you kidding us? Dr. Stern said cautiously. There are no Hulk cells in Mr. Banner's body. I can be sure of this. Blonsky shouted frantically. I don't care, let him come out, or I will beat you to death. General Ross frowned and glared at Norman. Is this what you call success? Norman was about to speak when he suddenly realized something was wrong and immediately took a step back. The next second, General Ross opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He calmly wiped the blood with a handkerchief and asked someone to pull Bronsky away. Dr. Stern looked at General Ross with admiration. He was truly an American soldier. He even vomited blood without changing his expression and looked as if he was used to it. As for General Ross's daughter Betty, she did not see General Ross vomiting blood because her mind was entirely on Dr. Banner. I don't care if you are an ordinary person, Bruce Banner, I will treat you well. General Ross snorted and asked someone to carry Dr. Banner down on a stretcher. Norman followed General Ross away with a look of displeasure. Bronsky and the other 5 enhanced people stayed, their eyes full of unwillingness. At this time, Blonsky thought of something and turned his attention to Dr. Stern. At the SHIELD base, Logan said unhappily, "It's a waste of time, I still want to meet the Hulk." Natasha was about to speak when her cell phone rang. After she answered the call, Tony's voice came out, "Natasha, I need help." Good. After listening to what Tony said, Natasha nodded and said, "I will notify the Mutant Academy and ask them to send people to support you. However, SHIELD and the X-Men only have a cooperative relationship. Afterwards, you have to repay the Mutant Academy." Quote. Then, Natasha put down the phone and said, "There's something going on with Tony. There's going to be a lot of trouble tonight." Logan said, "What happened to that rich guy? Should we go over to help? Anyway, everything is fine here." "No, my intuition tells me that this matter won't end that easily." Natasha shook her head. "Of course, I hope my intuition is wrong. Hey, when will Coulson come back? I'm really not used to being a commander. Let's push the time forward a little." Tony Stark repaired the Mark 6 suit and was about to join Natasha and the others. At this moment, Rhodes called. Tony asked, "Rod, did you find anything?" Tony, "Not only did I meet Ivan Vanko, I also met, Rhodes screamed and the call was suddenly interrupted. Tony was startled and hurriedly dialed back, only to find that the other party's phone had been turned off. "Jarvis, equip yourself with a suit." Tony cursed and immediately equipped the Mark 6. Rhodes was helping him check things, and he would never let anything happen to the other party. Of course, Tony was not careless. Before setting off, he called Natasha and asked SHIELD to support him. After getting Natasha's permission, Tony rushed to his destination at full speed. Soon, he arrived at the warehouse of Hammer Industries. Before he got close, he found Rhodes standing in the square wearing a gray suit, a visor not closed, so Tony recognized the other person. Tony fell from the sky next to Rhodes and asked anxiously, "Rhodes, how are you?" Seeing Tony appear, Rhodes' expression changed and he shouted hurriedly, "Tony, run quickly, this is a trap." Just as Tony was about to speak, the lights in the distance turned on. Then, 2 steel suits and 30 unmanned suits appeared around the square, surrounding Tony. Tony's heart sank. He knew there was a trap, but he didn't expect it to be such a big trap. Then he complained, "Is this your taste or Hammer's taste? Forgive me, they are really ugly. If you don't have money to hire a designer, I can pay to hire one for you." "Tony, your mouth is still as poisonous as ever." Obadiah opened his helmet and laughed. It is worth mentioning that his suit is particularly big, and the Iron Overlord is worthy of his name. Obadiah. Tony was stunned. He didn't expect that Obadiah, Ivan Vanki, and Hammer would actually collude together. In fact, Hammer was just a big guy who provided money and effort. Obadiah shouted, "It's me, Tony, I'm here to take back what's mine." "What's yours?" "Your toilet," Tony snorted coldly. "Obadiah, Ivan Vanki, do you think I will be afraid of you, a loser group?" "Tony Stark, the grudges between the Vanki family and the Stark family will be completely resolved tonight." Ivan didn't want to talk nonsense. He raised his hand and 30 unmanned suits flew in a circle towards Tony and Rhodes. At the same time, the machine guns behind them were activated, aiming at Rhodes and Tony. "How despicable!" Tony cursed and kicked Rhodes to the ground. Then, the backs of his hands lit up red, and 2 red lasers roared out. As he turned, most of the unmanned suits around him were cut into pieces. In both halves, the fracture is filled with red color representing high temperature. Obadiah and Ivan were shocked at the same time. Tony Stark actually had such a powerful killing move. Fortunately, they let the unmanned suits take the lead, otherwise, they would be the ones being cut open. On the rooftop, Howard couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw Tony showing off his power. He said proudly, "As expected of his son, he has at least learned 30% of my skills." Andrew sneered, "Are you talking about bragging? What's the point of having too many people? The most important thing about a steel suit is its core technology." Tony said proudly, "You won't be able to catch up with my skills in 100 years. Ivan, do you think I really lost to you before? If there weren't so many people, you would have died long ago." Obadiah looked at Tony with fear and did not dare to step forward easily. At this time, Ivan sneered, "This trick is indeed very powerful, but it can only be used once. Tony, do you think you can scare me?" Tony's heart sank, and he snorted coldly, "You'll know if you come here and give it a try." "Then try it." Ivan didn't waste any time and started the aircraft and rushed towards Tony. Just as Tony was about to attack, Rhodes, who had been kicked down by him before, suddenly got up and hugged him tightly from behind. Tony asked in shock and anger, "Rod, what are you doing?" Rhodes shouted, "It's not me, I can't control the suit." "Sorry, I also have the core technology." Ivan smiled ferociously and swung the electric whip towards Tony's chest. Tony gritted his teeth, jumped and turned around to use Rhodes as a shield. At the same time, he quietly attached a small object to Rhodes' suit. Snap, the electric whip hit Rhodes' suit hard, and the suit was torn open. Rhodes yelled in shock and anger, "Tony!" Plastic brother Tony took the opportunity to get out of Rod's control. Then, he flew into the sky and shouted, "I've calculated that you won't die. Just wait, I'll come back to save you later. You don't have a moment." Obadiah saw that Tony was just bluffing and immediately fired missiles at Tony. At the same time, the remaining 10 unmanned suits also joined the attack. Large caliber bullets and micro missiles were flying in the air. Although Tony tried his best to avoid them, he was still bombarded to the ground by a missile. "There is no way, there are too many enemies." Ivan took the opportunity to lash out at Tony with a whip. At this moment, a purple figure jumped down from the building next to him, and cut off Ivan's electric whip with a knife with a dazzling purple light. Then, the purple figure fell to the ground with a thud, its hair flying freely in the air, looking very heroic. The person who came was none other than Lingdi. Court death. Ivan was furious and controlled the unmanned suit to use a machine gun to shoot wildly at Tony and Psylocke. Tony and Psylocke hurriedly avoided, and the bullets left a large number of small holes in the ground. At this time, a missile fell from the sky and hit an unmanned suit and exploded. The unmanned suit was torn into pieces, with various parts flying around. Ivan looked up and saw a jet plane appearing in the sky, but it was the X-Men who came to support. Jets are no match for the iron suit. You go down to join the battle, and I will control the plane to leave. Beast Hank shouted as he opened the tailgate of the fighter plane. Storm, Jean, Colossus, and Cyclops nodded, and fell to the ground surrounded by the strong wind, officially joining the battle. On the other side, Spider-Man, who had recently been robbed of a lot of limelight by Spider-Woman, appeared on the wall of the building. When he saw the situation in the square, he immediately chose to help Iron Man. You are all going to die. Seeing reinforcements arriving one after another, Obadiah and Ivan looked very ugly and led the unmanned suits to fight with the X-Men. The X-Men arrived, and Tony couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. As he flew up to fight Ivan, he shouted excitedly to Psylocke, "Wow, hot girl, you came in time. When the battle is over, we can exchange phone numbers." Number. Psylocke pressed the communicator in her ear and said, "Pepper, your man has to pay more to hook up with me." Tony was dumbfounded. Psylocke was actually called by Pepper. That's right, Psylocke is not an X-Men, she was specially found by Pepper. After the last incident, the two women became friends. "No problem, it's not my money anyway." Pepper's voice sounded from the communicator, and anyone could hear it. She was very unhappy. Little Pepper. Tony wanted to explain something, but at this moment, a weirdo dressed in black and red uniform rushed into the warehouse, brandished a pair of knives and shouted at Tony, "Iron Man, seduce me quickly, so I can make more money. At worst, I will give you an advantage once. The technique is superb and everyone praises it." Tony looked confused, and Psylocke couldn't help but cover her face. When she took the mission, Pepper asked her to find more people. The problem was that ordinary mercenaries were no match for the iron suit, so she took Wade with her. This guy has countless shortcomings, but he has one advantage: he can't be killed no matter how hard he fights. Well, many times, this is considered a shortcoming, such as now. On the rooftop, Howard said happily, "Tony has found a good woman, so I feel relieved." You should use the word close your eyes. Andrew shook his head and said, "You and Tony's lives are really good. They harmed countless beautiful women. Not only did they not suffer retribution, but they each married perfect wives." Frank nodded with deep understanding, and Howard said confidently, "Boss, I don't agree with what you said. I am indeed sleeping with a beautiful woman, but the beautiful woman is also sleeping with me. This is a win-win situation. How can it be described as a disaster?" Andrew complained, "Howard, with your virtue, you are destined to go to hell with or without Mephisto." "I never thought I would go to heaven." Howard shrugged. "If an arms dealer can go to heaven, there is only one possibility. Heaven has fallen." Andrew shook his head and turned his attention to Greyburn College, which was the highlight of the night. Dr. Banner has been carried onto the helicopter, and only Dr. Stern, the 5 Bronskys and some ordinary soldiers are left in the laboratory. They are finishing the work, such as taking away the Hulk's blood. Dr. Stern sighed. Now, let alone Nobel, even whether he can escape safely is a question. At this moment, Bronsky suddenly attacked and broke the head of an ordinary soldier. Although the other enhanced soldiers did not know the reason, they followed Bronsky immediately. Soon, all those ordinary soldiers were eliminated. Then, Blonsky walked up to the frightened Dr. Stern with a ferocious look and shouted, "Turn me into the Hulk, don't say you can't do it, because then you will die." Dr. Stern swallowed, looked at Bronsky up and down, and said, "You are different from ordinary people. Maybe I can do it, but this experiment is very dangerous. If something goes wrong, you may become a monster." Quote, "I don't care about becoming a monster, I just care about not having power." Bronsky shouted with a crazy look. At this time, he thought of something and said to the 4 reinforced soldiers behind him, "I will not force you, you make your own choice." "Captain, we also want the power of Hulk." The 4 enhanced soldiers shouted at the same time that the human enhancement potion made them extremely extreme and crazy. Blonsky nodded with satisfaction, and he shouted to Dr. Stern, "Start quickly." "All right." Dr. Stern did not dare to object and let the 5 people lie on the hospital bed. Then, he injected Hulk's blood impure into the 5 people and then irradiated them with gamma rays. In the green light, the 5 people roared in pain at the same time. Then, their strong bodies quickly swelled and changed color, and even their clothes were torn. Not long after, 5 yellow-green bald monsters nearly 3 meters tall, with muscles all over their bodies and spines extending from their backs appeared in the laboratory. Dr. Stern fell to the ground in fright. The 5 Bronskis who turned into monsters were not angry. They felt the violent power in their bodies and laughed at the same time. This was the invincible power they wanted. The 5 hatreds were officially born. New York really has all kinds of monsters. Howard sighed, and Frank made a decision in his mind to move. After this incident is over, he must move. This poor place is not suitable for people to stay. Dr. Stern was frightened. He crawled back and shouted, "Maybe I can help you recover." Blonsky felt very irritable and threw it at Dr. Stern. Dr. Stern's eyes were full of despair, and he was finished. At this moment, Dr. Stern appeared out of thin air in a floating hall, and then a human-shaped flame appeared in front of him and said, "Give me your soul, work for me, and I will save your life." Dr. Stern was stunned for a moment, and then asked cautiously, "Who are you?" "I am the Demon King and your future boss, Dr. Stern." "Don't waste time and sign the contract." Andrew said, "I can give you the security, fame, and money you want." After speaking, a contract appeared out of thin air in front of Dr. Stern. He hesitated and chose to sign the contract. The reason was very simple. He was afraid of death, and he liked fame and fortune. Andrew was not surprised by Dr. Stern's choice and waved him away from the conscious space. Immediately afterwards, Bronsky's fist hit Dr. Stern's chest. Dr. Stern flew backwards, hit the cabinet with a bang and slid down. Of course, he did not die, but there was a big gash in his forehead, Andrew's power protecting him. Andrew took a sip of tea with satisfaction and said, "Rebirth Hell is about to welcome a new genius." "You mean that doctor? He can barely use it." Howard said that Dr. Stern is indeed a genius, but he is not on the same level as him or Trask. Andrew shook his head and said, "I'm not talking about him." Howard didn't know why. At this time, the bottle containing Hulk's blood fell down due to the impact on the laboratory cabinet, and some of the blood dripped onto the wound on Dr. Stern's forehead. After fused with Hulk's blood, Dr. Stern's head began to grow larger. However, he did not feel any pain, and instead had an intoxicated look on his face. "I'm talking about him." Andrew said that after Dr. Stern is infected by the blood of the Hulk, he will become Big Boss. Big Boss is the villain of the Hulk's next movie. Unfortunately, because The Incredible Hulk failed at the box office, Big Boss completely lost his appearance. Chance. After becoming the Big Boss, Dr. Stern's wisdom will increase significantly, which is why Andrew personally signed a contract with him. An ordinary genius becomes a super genius and makes a lot of money. Andrew smiled and took the future Big Boss into the rebirth hell. When this disaster was over, he would go see him again. "Get ready to start." Then, Andrew nodded to Howard and Frank and waved them to the Anti-Cross spacecraft. At the same time, the 5 abominations could not control the rage in their hearts and jumped down from the building one after another. The soldiers discovered them and immediately surrounded them. The next second, screams and roars sounded one after another, and a disaster officially struck. General Ross, a big monster, has appeared in Grayburn College. On the armed helicopter, General Ross received a frightened call from a soldier. He looked back at Dr. Banner and asked, "Did you see it wrong? The big monster is on the helicopter." "That's right." Just as the soldier was mid-sentence, he screamed and lost contact. General Ross hurriedly asked other soldiers to transmit the image to the helicopter's screen. He, Dr. Banner and others were shocked when they saw this. On Broadway, 5 huge monsters are at war with the army and police, or in other words, unilaterally massacred. One of the monsters completely ignored the incoming bullets and overturned a police car with one hand. The police car rolled and hit the store and exploded, with flames and black smoke rising into the sky. Another monster jumped onto an infantry fighting vehicle, and the soldiers on the vehicle were crushed together with the fighting vehicle. The remaining monsters laughed and slaughtered the troops and police wantonly. The streets were filled with blood, corpses, and flames, and countless people screamed and ran away. The prosperous Broadway has turned into a battlefield of blood and fire. To make matters worse, the disaster is quickly spreading to other neighborhoods. 5 Hulks. How is this possible? General Ross was stunned. He thought for a while and shouted, "Turn around and go back. Also, let S.H.I.E.L.D. help. Norman, you are responsible for containing a monster." "Good." Norman gritted his teeth, put on his armor, started the aircraft, left the helicopter and flew towards Greyburn College. Whether he could become a superhero or not depends on this time. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have sent the blood to Mr. Lan. Dr. Banner clenched his fists, his heart filled with guilt. At this moment, he remembered the blood in his arms and hesitated. On the other side, Natasha cursed. I knew something was going to happen. Logan, you contain one monster. Barton, you take charge of the overall situation. The others will follow me to contain the remaining monsters. I like killing monsters. Wolverine smiled ferociously, jumped from the second floor to the street, and rushed towards an abomination. This agent is getting harder and harder to work with. Should I retire early? Barton, who was on the top of the building, shook his head and drew his longbow to aim at one of the abominations. The remaining agents followed Natasha to the battlefield. Although it was dangerous, it was their mission, wasn't it? What happened here was immediately reported to Nick Fury, who immediately took command remotely. He looked at the ugly and ferocious hatred and couldn't help but cursed. Then, he took out his mobile phone from his arms and calmly opened the last year. It downloaded very quickly. Everyone in the command room looked at Nick Fury in shock. Isn't this too blatant? The employee who had been punished before was even more angry. Only the director was allowed to have fun and employees were not allowed to be lazy. I'm gathering information, Nick Fury said without changing his expression. Then, he turned on the live broadcast of Bugle TV, and as expected, he saw Roseanne, the famous Good Luck, Warfield, reporter in New York. Good luck is the title New Yorkers give to Roseanne. Every time something happens in New York, she appears in the most dangerous places, but nothing ever happens. As you can see, there are 5 big monsters raging here, and many people have died tragically. In addition, my new cameraman ran away again. Luo Shan carried the camera and dedicated the live broadcast. According to the news our station received, these 5 monsters are actually soldiers of the military. The reason why they became abominations is because of the military's evil experiments. Quote. While Roseanne was reporting, photos of the 5 Bronskys were shown backstage and their stories were introduced in detail. Then, the TV station cut a small window to play the video of the battle at Calvo University. Andrew had not reported the matter just for tonight. These 5 big monsters created by the military are very scary. The police and soldiers can't stop them at all. Citizens are asked to flee this area as soon as possible and don't take any chances. At this point, Roxanne paused, and then she said in a tone that you can understand, no one knows what the military will do next. The citizens were stunned for a moment when they heard this, and then their whole bodies became cold. Based on the military's ethics, if those monsters could not be dealt with, they would definitely use missiles to clear the ground. Luo Shan was obviously hinting at this. Monsters are dangerous, and armies are even more dangerous. The citizens of Manhattan swallowed their saliva and fled the area as quickly as possible. Some people can escape, but some people cannot escape, because they are surrounded by battlefields and they dare not move at all. The only thing they can do is pray to God. Of course, God did not come, but the messenger of the devil came. Yelena asked with a smile, are you willing to trade your soul after death for safety? It's open. While drinking tea, Andrew pulled the citizens who were filled with despair and fear into the illusion and signed a soul contract. At the same time, an anti-cross spacecraft appeared over the battlefield, and a large number of robots descended from the sky to move the contractors to a safe place. With the help of the haters and the military, Andrew will gain a lot this time. These monsters are actually from the military. Those fools are really unreliable. After watching the live broadcast, Nick Fury cursed loudly. Of course, there is good news. At least, there is someone to take the blame. The Daily Bugle's intelligence is too fast and accurate, isn't it? Have they installed monitors on the monsters? Maria Hill couldn't help complaining. She asked, Director, didn't you send someone to investigate the Daily Bugle? There is obviously something wrong with the Daily Bugle. 10% of the employees of the Daily Bugle are agents of our shield. There are also people who pretend to be sweepers and bring newspaper garbage back to the branch every day. Do you think I have investigated it? Nick Fury said angrily. The Daily Bugle's information came from a mysterious person. Even their editor-in-chief doesn't know who it is. In addition, the Daily Bugle is that person's property, so we can't go too far. Maria Hill asked in confusion. What does that one want to do? I also want to know the answer. Nick Fury thought of something and asked the communications staff on the side, where is Andrew Wong now? The communications officer replied, drinking tea on the roof of the Rebirth building. How leisurely. It's good news. At the very least, he might take action. Nick Fury shook his head, turned on the communicator, and shouted to Natasha, Natasha, these 5 abominations are weakened versions of the Hulk and have self-healing capabilities. Be careful, I have sent Quinjet fighters to support them, you. Natasha couldn't help but curse. Weakened version of Hulk. Self-healing ability. Could it be worse? Maybe it can. Nick Fury said. Natasha, special mission, go to the laboratory to remove all Hulk's blood. You cannot let them fall into the hands of others. If something goes wrong, I allow you to destroy them all. Clear. Natasha nodded and led a small team towards Greyburn College. Here, Wolverine and Abomination number 2 were facing each other. Wolverine didn't waste any time. He rushed forward and stabbed 2 claw blades into Abomination number 2's waist. Number 2 hated pain, grabbed Wolverine's shoulders and threw him violently. Wolverine flew hundreds of meters away, crashed through a wall and fell into a coffee shop. It's so strong. Fortunately, my bones are made of adamantium alloy. Wolverine got up from the ground in pain, his injuries recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this time, Wolverine saw Abomination number 2 rushing towards this direction, and couldn't help but curse. The wound on the opponent's waist was gone, which meant that the opponent could also heal on his own. Wolverine hates fighting people with self-healing abilities the most in his life, because no one knows better than him how disgusting people with self-healing abilities are. Hate is hate. Wolverine will not be afraid. He roared and faced the charging Abomination No. 2. When the 2 were about to collide, he knocked No. 2 Abomination to the ground with a skillful sliding shovel. Then, Wolverine pierced Abomination 2's heart with his claws, and just as he was about to stir it up, Abomination 2 roared and punched him in the chest. Boom! The ground instantly sunk into a big pit, and Wolverine felt like his internal organs were shattered. Number 2 was so disgusted that he punched Wolverine several times in succession. Each punch caused the ground to shake violently. Then he stood up and stomped on Wolverine's head. At this moment, a sharp arrow hit the left eye of Hatred No. 2. Hatred number 2 reacted very quickly and raised his left arm to resist. His body was very strong and the arrow only slightly penetrated the arm. The arrow was made of special alloy, otherwise, it can't even break the skin. Hatred number 2 was about to pull out the long arrow. At this time, a large amount of electricity came out of the arrow and spread throughout Hatred number 2's body. Hatred number 2 froze in place, unable to move. Wolverine, who was half recovered, took the opportunity to jump up and slashed at Hatred number 2's neck with his claw blade. He didn't believe that the other person could survive after losing his head. At this critical moment, a motorcycle flew from a distance and hit Wolverine hard. Wolverine was thrown out on the spot and flattened a car behind him with a bang. But it was Bronski who came to help. Then, with a roar, he jumped onto the wall of the building and climbed up quickly. A large amount of bricks and stones fell down, and the residents in the building shivered with fear. Hawkeye Barton cursed and used a rope arrow to escape to the building next door. His small body could not block Abomination's fist. Upon seeing this, Abomination immediately jumped from the building to give chase. Panic quickly spread to other neighborhoods. It's time for a drumstick for Hawkeye and Blonsky. Andrew smiled and said that wherever Blonsky went, the performance of the Black Widows kept rising. There was nothing we could do, he was too scary. Patton shouted over the communicator, when will the Quinjet come? I can only hold on for 3 minutes at most. Nick Fury said, we're on our way, Mr. 3 minutes. Quote. Eagle Eye was speechless. Believe it or not, I went on strike on the spot. While Hawkeye was escaping, Abomination number 2 recovered from the electric current. He was furious and rushed towards Wolverine. Wolverine pushed away the car with a fierce fighting spirit on his face. It seemed that he had a good day today. It's a fight. Wolverine is never afraid of fighting. Come on, you monster. The old Green Goblin Norman drove a black smoke aircraft to challenge Abomination No. 3. Abomination number 3 roared, took down the lamppost and threw it at Norman. Norman avoided it nimbly, and then he controlled the aircraft to launch micro-missiles at Abomination No. 3. With a bang, Abomination Number 3 was blown back a step, but he was not seriously injured, but became even more angry. The defense is about the same as the Hulk. It's really troublesome. Norman cursed, took out a particularly expensive energy gun and shot at Abomination No. 3. A big wound immediately appeared on Abomination Number 3's shoulder. He roared, removed the car door to use as a shield, and at the same time imitated Blonsky and climbed onto the side building. Idiot, do you think this will work? Norman smiled disdainfully and threw pumpkin bombs at Abomination Number 3 one after another. With a bang, Abomination Number 3 fell off the building and created a big crater in the ground. At the same time, the bombed bricks and stones of the building were flying everywhere, flames were burning everywhere, and the residents inside were screaming. Some of the unlucky ones were even killed directly. Norman didn't care about the citizens at all, and controlled the machine gun to shoot at Abomination. What made him depressed was that Abomination had the same self-healing ability as Hulk, which meant that he could not solve the opponent in a short time. The old Green Goblin is the old Green Goblin, there's no way he can become a superhero. Andrew looked at Norman, who was smiling strangely on the light screen, and couldn't help but shake his head. A real superhero would never attack randomly like this. Hulk has never been a real superhero, he just likes to fight. Of course, it doesn't matter whether the old Green Goblin is a superhero or not. What's important is that his unscrupulous behavior filled the people around him with fear, and the Black Widows took the opportunity to lobby them to sign a soul contract. To Andrew, the old Green Goblin was definitely a good guy. Blonsky is chasing Patton, Abomination Number 2 is fighting Wolverine, Abomination Number 3 is being restrained by Norman, and Abomination Number 4 and Abomination Number 5 are left, killing the surrounding soldiers and agents. The soldiers and agents are very brave, but unfortunately, they are no match for the Abominations. They are just using their lives to delay time. When Frank and Howard saw this, they looked at each other and fell from the sky to stop the two enemies. Andrew did not stop him. He didn't care about the small loss of souls. After all, he was in big business. With an axe in one hand and a shield in the other, Howard was both offensive and defensive, barely able to contain Abomination No. 4. As for Frank, he is a complete offensive person. He relies on powerful firepower to suppress Abomination No. 5. Abomination Number 5 grits his teeth in anger. Let me see how many arms you have. When you run out of shells, I will tear you apart. With the help of the two steel suits, the soldiers and agents finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, they did not escape and supported Howard and Frank. At SHIELD headquarters, Maria Hill sighed. Fortunately there is the Peace Knights, otherwise many people would have died. The actions of the Peace Knights are too weird. It doesn't matter that they come to save people every time. The key is that some of them save and some don't. This is really incomprehensible. Nick Fury said. Coulson has been investigating their intelligence, but found nothing, as if they are not from this world. After a pause, Nick Fury continued. More importantly, their robots are constantly increasing, which means they are constantly getting stronger. This is very dangerous. Maybe one day they will endanger the world. Hill knew that paranoid Nick Fury was having another episode. Why haven't the fighter jets come yet? Do you want to go to court-martial? On the armed helicopter, General Ross shouted angrily with a communicator that if he wanted to eliminate those abominations, he must clear the ground with large-scale missiles. Betty heard this and shouted, "Dad, there are many people down there." General Ross said ironically, "If we don't kill those monsters, more people will die. Those so-called superheroes can't stop them at all. This can't be like this, no more people can die because of me." Dr. Banner looked at the tragic situation below, gritted his teeth, took out the tube of blood from his arms, and said to Betty, "Betty, I'm sorry." Bruce. Betty knew what Dr. Banner was going to do, and her eyes were full of tears, but she didn't stop it. Now, only Hulk can save everyone. In the past 5 years, I have always wanted to get rid of the Hulk. I never thought that today I would take the initiative to become the Hulk. It seems that this is my fate. Dr. Banner sighed and injected the blood into his body. This tube of blood was originally his and did not require any special assistance. Soon, the blood took effect, and Dr. Banner's body quickly grew larger and turned green. He roared in pain and jumped out of the tailgate. Betty yelled and was grabbed by General Ross. Abomination number 4 was smashing a car into Howard. At this moment, with a bang, a heavy object fell from the sky and made a big hole in the ground. Hatred number 4 couldn't help but look towards the pit. At this time, a big green hand stretched out from the pit, and then, a big green man climbed up, crawling, not jumping. I'm actually still sane. Dr. Banner looked at his big hands, a little excited. This time he transformed. He did not lose his mind. Although his body became bigger and greener, he was still the same Banner. Banner, you are still on the same path. Andrew shook his head and was not optimistic about Dr. Banner at all. Banner's wisdom plus Hulk's power sounded perfect, but in fact, it was nothing. I wonder if Dr. Banner can return to his human form. Andrew touched his chin. It would be fun if Dr. Banner was the same as Avengers 4. Seeing the Hulk appear, Nick Fury and others couldn't help but smile on their faces. With Hulk here, those hatreds should be solved. At this time, Maria Hill said suspiciously, "Director, why does this Hulk feel wrong? The original Hulk was mighty and domineering, but this Hulk feels like a green fool, and the muscles on his body are not as fierce as the Hulk." Quote, Green Han. Nick Fury blinked, and an ominous premonition suddenly filled his heart. Hulk, number 4 hated seeing the Hulk and was so excited that he immediately gave up on Howard and rushed towards him. At this moment, a tall figure rushed from the side and knocked him away. Then, the figure shouted loudly, "The Hulk is mine." The person who came was none other than the hated Captain Bronski. He was full of anger towards the Hulk, and without any nonsense, he immediately rushed forward with a rumble. Chapter 71. Facing the charging Blonsky, Dr. Banner's first thought was to turn around and run away. Then, he swallowed, shouted and rushed towards Blonsky. The next second, two huge bodies collided hard, a circular air wave roared out, and all the surrounding glass shattered. Immediately afterwards, Dr. Banner flew out and fell heavily to the ground. Blonsky was unyielding and jumped towards Dr. Banner with all his strength. Dr. Banner hurriedly rolled to avoid it, and Bronski landed on the ground with a bang, making a big hole in the ground. Then, Bronski kicked Dr. Banner away from the ground, and boom, a building collapsed by Dr. Banner. Dr. Banner vs. Blonsky, crushing. General Ross and Nick Fury both looked confused. Is this Hulk a fake product? Is it so weak? The reason why Dr. Banner was defeated so miserably was not only because he was far inferior to Hulk, but also because he had no combat experience and did not understand combat skills. You know, Blonsky is the king of soldiers. This is different from Hulk, who has the best fighting instincts, and the more he fights, the stronger he becomes. Why are you so weak? Where did you go before? Blonsky was not happy about easily crushing Dr. Banner. Instead, he was filled with anger and shouted at Dr. Banner. I just need some time to find my groove. Dr. Banner walked out of the ruins and gave himself some encouragement. He still had advantages and was relatively durable. Looking for status. I'll help you find it. If you can't find it, just die for me. Blonsky rushed forward and beat Dr. Banner violently. Dr. Banner tried his best to resist. Although it was useless, at least it held Blonsky back. While the fight was going on outside, Natasha led the team into Dr. Stern's laboratory. As soon as they entered, they found two people putting Hulk's blood into the box. Stop, this blood belongs to S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha immediately raised her gun and aimed it at each other. When the two heard the words, they turned their heads at the same time and looked at Natasha coldly. Of these two people, one of them was covered in black clothes. His appearance was unclear and he felt very bloated. The other had long hair, wore a mask, and his left arm was made of metal, giving people a very cold feeling. It's you. When Natasha saw the man with the metal arm, her expression changed and she immediately shot him. She had fought with him before, and although she managed to escape, she could never wear a bikini in the future. There was an obvious scar on her abdomen. The man with the metal arm, Bucky, the Winter Soldier, blocked the bullet with his metal arm. Then he threw a bottle of Hulk's blood at Natasha and others. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly evaded. Bucky took the opportunity to pull out the light gun from behind his waist. Submachine guns fired at the crowd. We must not let them take the Hulk's blood away. Natasha shouted, how much hatred can be created with so much blood here? The agents heard this and shot at Bucky. Bucky was not afraid and hid behind a cabinet and shot at the agents. "You're in bad luck." The man in black smiled ferociously, tore open his outer clothes, and a set of simple exoskeleton armor and an arc reactor appeared in front of everyone. Immediately afterwards, the man in black pushed the cabinet hard, and the heavy cabinet immediately fell towards Natasha. Natasha hurriedly rolled to avoid the cabinet. Natasha was shocked. Stark's arc reactor, the military's exoskeleton armor. What is the origin of this guy? Exoskeleton armor is being studied by armies all over the world, which can greatly increase the combat capabilities of soldiers. However, it is limited by batteries and is not very practical. The emergence of the arc reactor has completely changed everything. Basically, Men in Black can be called a poor copycat version of Iron Man. Are you ready to suffer? Only through pain can you have order. The man in black stepped on the cabinet and rushed towards Natasha. Natasha raised her gun and shot at him, but it was blocked by the steel shell on his body. Then, the man in black kicked Natasha in the chest. Natasha seemed to be hit by a car. It hit, flew straight out, hit the wall and fell off. Why do I always encounter such powerful opponents? I'm just a pretty mortal with a good figure, okay. Natasha cursed and struggled to get up from the ground. Then, she grabbed a bottle of Hulk's blood and threw it at the man in black. The man in black's expression changed slightly and he hurriedly dodged. His exoskeleton armor did not work. It's not all inclusive and there are many places that are not protected. When Natasha saw this, she threw away the gun, grabbed the bottle and kept smashing it on the man in black. On the one hand, she could block the enemy, and on the other hand, she could take the opportunity to destroy the Hulk's blood. Bucky wanted to come over to stop Natasha, but was blocked by the agents desperately. Bucky's eyes flashed with a cold light. Using his metal arm as a shield to resist bullets, he rushed into the agents and started killing. Hydra also ran out. Seeing the situation in the laboratory, Andrew contacted Howard and asked, "Howard, your murderer has appeared. Are you interested in beating him up?" "Sergeant Barnes, where is he?" Howard immediately shouted after hearing this. He not only wanted to seek revenge from Bucky, but also wanted to find the mastermind behind the scenes through Bucky. What happened back then was so mysterious that he vaguely felt that there was a big problem within S.H.I.E.L.D. Andrew said, "In the laboratory, you go." "Good." Howard nodded, asked Trask to take over from him to contain Abomination No. 4, and quickly flew towards the laboratory. Soon, Howard came to the laboratory. At this time, the agents had been slaughtered by Bucky, and the Black Widow was also in danger. When Howard saw this, he shouted, "Soldier, give me back my life." The three people present were confused. What is going on? The confusion returned to confusion and did not hinder Howard and the man in black. Bucky had a fight in the laboratory. Natasha saved her life and gasped for air in the corner. By the way, what happened to this world? There are monsters everywhere. At this moment, a huge explosion suddenly came from the direction of Queens. Even Manhattan felt violent shaking. Both the enemy and ourselves were a little shocked. What happened over there? Let's move forward a little bit to the Flushing Hammer Industrial Warehouse location. Cyclops flipped the switch on his glasses, and a red laser blasted towards the unmanned suit on the opposite side. A large high-temperature hole was blasted out of the unmanned suit's head on the spot. The remaining unmanned suits fired at Cyclops one after another. Colossus turned into steel and stood in front of Cyclops, and all the bullets fell to the ground with a clanking sound. At the same time, Storm was flying in the sky, using the strong wind as a shield while controlling lightning to blast at the unmanned suits. Chin did not lag behind, using her telekinesis to control the unmanned suit to resist micro-missiles. For some reason, her telekinesis increased crazily during this period, and she could now easily do things that she could not do before. While the X-Men are dealing with the unmanned suit, Psylocke and the mercenary Wade are dealing with Iron Overlord, Spider-Man is dealing with War Machine, and Iron Man is dealing with Ivan the Whip. Iron Overlord firepower is very fierce. Unfortunately, his opponents are Wade and Psylocke. One of them can't be killed no matter how hard they fight, while the other can easily cut through steel. If they cooperate with each other, even Iron Overlord can't do it quickly. Take them down. Rhodes was trapped in the War Machine and unable to control himself. The only thing he could do was to inform Spider-Man, "Be careful, the data shows that a missile is about to be launched." Copy that, Mr. Rhodes. Spider-Man immediately stuck an iron cover with spider silk and swung it towards the incoming missile. With a bang, the missile exploded. Rhodes said with satisfaction, "Well done, boy, be careful, the machine gun is activated." As Spider-Man fires spider slime to jam War Machine's machine gun, he complains, "Why does it feel like cheating? Barbarian, the trap you set is so good, I lost 3 hairs." Tony Stark, "You are the filthiest and most disgusting bedbug I have ever seen." The battle between Iron Man and Ivan was very fierce. It refers to their swear words. The two were fighting and swearing at each other, from the grievances and curses of the previous generation to the hatred of this generation. Tony's poisonous tongue, Ivan's swear words, they are all master level. To be honest, Tony was a little depressed. Why should he understand Russian? If you don't understand, many words can be automatically filtered. Iron Overlord punched Wade away and shouted anxiously to Ivan through the internal communication, "Ivan, we can't go on like this. Iron Man has shield behind him, and time is on his side. Obadiah, fly up." Ivan snorted, gave up on his opponent and flew up. Iron Man was about to pursue him, but War Machine gave up on Spider-Man and hugged him again from behind. Tony cursed. Again. At the same time, the remaining unmanned suits raised their right fists one after another, and then, their fists separated from their bodies like cannonballs, and wrapped around Psylocke and the X-Men with chains. "Be careful, there's something weird." Psylocke cut off the chain with a backhand knife and shouted to the others. Everyone did not dare to neglect and avoided the chains of the unmanned suit. However, Colossus, Wade, and Cyclops reacted a little slower and were entangled in the chains. Immediately afterwards, the war machines and the arc reactors on the chests of all unmanned suits lit up red at the same time, as if the bombs were counting down. Even those damaged unmanned suits were no exception. Tony's expression changed and he shouted hurriedly, "Be careful, those arc reactors will explode soon." While speaking, Tony broke free from the shackles of the war machine and let Jarvis use all his strength to crack the system of the war machine. Before, Tony put a small thing on the war machine, which was a small cracker. The war machine rushed towards Tony under the control of Ivan. Rhodes smiled bitterly and said, "Tony, don't worry about me, you can run away." Tony shouted, "What are you talking about? You haven't paid back the money you owe me, how can you die?" Rhodes rolled his eyes and said, "I think it's better to just die. Besides, what I owe is your bank's money, not your money. To be precise, it's called a loan. Did you tamper with the arc reactor?" Obadiah flew into the sky and asked Ivan in surprise, "Don't tell me that the arc reactor on Iron Overlord will also explode." "Don't worry about details. Anyone who cares about details is a fool." Ivan fired at Tony in the sky and shouted, "The most important thing to do now is to prevent them from escaping." "Isn't it a fool who doesn't care about details?" Obadiah cursed. If he guessed correctly, the batch of arc reactors given to the organization also had problems, and Ivan was definitely a fool. Despite the scolding, Obadiah did not get angry at this moment. He raised his gun and fired wildly at the X-Men. "Chin, you go first," Cyclops shouted while destroying the chains with lasers. Naturally, Jean would not abandon Cyclops, and used his telekinesis to throw away the remains of the unmanned suits on the ground. "Psylocke, help Colossus, I will take you out of here." Storm's eyes rolled white, the wind was strong around her, and even the bullets were deflected. "I don't need your help." Psylocke rushed over and cut off the chain in front of Colossus with a knife. Then, she threw the katana hard at the building in the distance. There was a purple light rope behind the katana. As the light rope shrank, she quickly flew into the sky. "So cool," Spider-Man praised, landed next to Wade, and shouted, "I will save you from leaving." Wade lay on the ground, posing in a rather, disgusting pose, and said, "Brother who is wearing a couple's costume with me, you can leave by yourself and don't worry about me." Couple costume. Spider-Man's face was a little dark. He stepped forward to grab Wade and was about to take him away by force, but was kicked away by Wade. Then, Wade cursed, "Get out of here, I want to receive the pension from the Stark Group. Miss Pepper is so generous, even Iron Man is eating her soft rice." Iron Man's face is also a bit dark. "This is the worst time I have ever been blackmailed." Spider-Man, don't pay attention to Wade. He won't die. His self-healing ability is so unscientific that he won't die no matter what. Colossus shouted, and at the same time, he, Cyclops, and Jean flew into the sky surrounded by strong winds. Let's go, I'm too popular to die, but you, be careful of being replaced. Spider-Man is not the only one, my couple costume partner. Wade chuckled, and Spider-Man scratched his head, turned around, fired his webbing, and fled away. At this time, the system of the war machine was finally cracked by Iron Man. He controlled the war machine to disintegrate and pulled Rhodes into the sky. Ivan and Obadiah cursed and fled away. An unexpected bonus. Andrew smiled and pulled the staff in the warehouse and the surrounding people into the illusion. The location of the warehouse was relatively remote, and the number of people was not too large, only a few thousand. These people discovered the war there early on, and most of them chose to sign a contract. Andrew sent a group of robots over and fled quickly with the contractors. The next second, boom, boom. 30 unmanned suits and one war machine exploded at the same time. Flames and black smoke rose into the sky. The whole world was shaking, and the warehouse of Hammer Industries was instantly razed to the ground. Buildings were also swept by the airwaves. Iron Man, X-Men and the others did not fly far enough and were all blown away by the air waves. Fortunately, no one died, at most they were injured. What, Wade? Of course he was not dead. When he flew up, he yawned in the air and thought about what gift to buy his wife. A bunch of tough bugs. Ivan scanned it and cursed unhappily. He was about to continue to cause trouble for Iron Man when Obadiah stopped him and said, "Go to Manhattan. There are allies over there. We will deal with Iron Man there. Walk." Ivan hesitated, and flew quickly towards Manhattan with Obadiah. Tony placed Rhodes on the rooftop and chased after him with a few words, "Those two guys must die. Take me with you, you can't defeat the two of them by yourself." Psylocke wrapped Tony's feet with an energy rope and shouted. Tony was a little moved. At this moment, Psylocke added, "It doesn't matter if you die. The key is that it will affect my ability to receive money." Tony rolled his eyes and returned my excitement. It is worth mentioning that Psylocke's spiritual energy can protect her, so she is not afraid of the oncoming strong wind. Spider-Man and the X-Men did not catch up. On the one hand, they were not as fast as the suit. On the other hand, there were people around who needed help. The explosion just now affected some people, some who did not sign the contract. Among them, Colossus has a special mission, which is to collect the remaining parts of Wade and throw them into a sack to wait for his resurrection. Although Colossus looks tall and thick, he is actually a very careful man. In addition, he likes men. The explosion shook Queens and Manhattan, and a rumor quickly spread on the online platform. It was a long-range missile launched by the military. It was launched into Queens due to mispositioning. Many people believed this rumor, and some even swore that they saw missiles streaking across the sky, killing many, many people. People in Queens and Manhattan panicked and fled these two boroughs one after another. It's not that they were easily fooled, it was really that the American military was untrustworthy and they could do anything. In fact, let alone them, even General Ross was a little skeptical that the military had launched the missile. With so many people fleeing together, traffic was naturally jammed, which made citizens increasingly anxious, fearing that military missiles would fall from the sky and kill them. Does this count as lying down and making money? Andrew laughed, and his consciousness covered two large areas, pulling the citizens full of fear and despair into a fantasy world, where the Black Widows sold the devil's safety insurance. It is worth mentioning that the previous rumor had nothing to do with Andrew. He has always only reported the truth. One-sided truth is also called the truth. He is a conscientious media person. No matter which country it is, there are always people who are afraid of chaos. The internet is indeed very convenient, but it also breeds a lot of problems. Is this Manhattan or a battlefield in the Middle East? Tony chased Ivan and Obadiah to Broadway Avenue. When he saw the situation below, he was suddenly shocked. The originally bustling neighborhood had been turned into ruins, with burning cars and collapsed buildings everywhere, as if the ground had been washed away by missiles. The destructive power of the five monsters was no less than that of missiles. Fortunately, with the help of robots, not too many people were killed or injured. Most people chose to sign soul contracts. It is worth mentioning that Spider-Woman Gwen and the masked Jessica Jones have already arrived here. They dare not fight against the abomination and save the injured soldiers and citizens on the side. Is this the hate the organization wants? Looking at the big green man below, Obadiah's eyes lit up. He thought for a moment and launched a missile at the old green goblin flying in the sky. Boom! The missile hit the old green goblin's aircraft and exploded. Norman was shocked and fell straight from the sky. Why did Obadiah attack the old green goblin? Because he wants to make this place more chaotic. The old green goblin is dressed in green and flying in the sky. If not him, who will he bomb? Upon seeing this, Tony immediately flew over to catch the old green goblin. Then, he threw the old green goblin on the rooftop and continued to chase Ivan and Obadiah. With his feet on the ground, Norman breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, he noticed that there was a camera below that was pointed at here, and his expression suddenly turned ugly. It seemed that the scene just now was broadcast. He, Norman Osborn, became the stepping stone for Iron Man. This made Norman very angry. He not only hated Obadiah, but also Iron Man. These two guys completely messed up his debut plan. At this time, a huge figure jumped from the downstairs to the rooftop with a bang, looking at Norman with a ferocious expression. It was the Abomination number 3 who had been bombarded by him. Green monster, your death has come. Abomination number 3 rushed towards Norman with a bang. Norman's expression changed drastically, and he immediately turned around and ran away. Without the air superiority, he was no match for Abomination at all. Iron Man didn't know that much. While chasing Ivan and the two, he shouted to Nick Fury through the communicator, "That's it. Where is the guy who can fight the most and be the best?" Nick Fury replied, "Drinking tea on the rooftop." Quote. Iron Man was speechless. At this time, that guy was drinking tea on the rooftop. "Are you kidding me?" he shouted. "You just watch him drinking tea and doing nothing." "It's not that I don't do anything, it's that I can't do anything." Nick Fury sighed. Whether he takes action or not depends entirely on his mood. Fortunately, he is in a good mood now. If it is about to collapse, he will most likely take action. The safety of New York depends on his mood. Iron Man was very dissatisfied, and his belief in becoming stronger was stronger than ever before. This guy was completely unreliable, and New York needed to be protected by him. At this time, Ivan and Obadiah stopped at Grayburn College, where Howard was fighting the Winter Soldier Bucky and the Man in Black, with Natasha assisting. Seeing Obadiah and the others arriving, the Man in Black breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly shouted, "Obadiah, help me stop this guy." Good. Obadiah immediately fell down to block Howard's axe. Ivan shouted dissatisfied, "Obadiah, what do you mean? I want to kill Tony Stark, and I have no interest in helping you complete the task. Here you can get one-on-one with Tony Stark." Obadiah and Ivan explained, and then he shouted to the Man in Black, "Leave one person behind, and the other person leaves with the blood of the Hulk. Winter Soldier, you stay." The Man in Black didn't say anything nonsense, and immediately left the Winter Soldier behind, carrying the box and running away behind him. Black Widow immediately chased after him, and at the same time called other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to come over for support. At this time, Iron Man and Psylocke arrived. Psylocke jumped from the air, rolled and landed firmly on the ground, while Tony rushed towards Ivan angrily, and the two started fighting again. On the ground, Howard fought against Obadiah. He was extremely ruthless and merciless. He was a bald fool. "I trust you so much, but you actually harmed my son. Do you want to be so cruel?" Obadiah cursed, avoided Howard's axe, turned around and punched the opponent hard. Although he didn't know what was going on with the opponent, he was an iron bully and was not afraid. At the same time, Psylocke and Bucky faced off. Both of them were top fighters. They fought against each other. The fight was so exciting that even Andrew couldn't help but nod. Bucky shows up. Captain America should be here soon, right? Andrew thought to himself. At this time, he received a call from the Black Widow. "Boss, the military has decided to bomb Broadway to eliminate the Abomination. In addition, the spaceship is also their target. The Black Widow Corps has an intelligence network that is not inferior to S.H.I.E.L.D. After Andrew took over the Black Widow Corps, he not only retained this intelligence network, but also increased investment in the American region. Whether it is the White House or the military, there are Black Widows. This time, Andrew contacted a Black Widow in advance and asked her to pay attention to the military's movements. "Attack my ship. Why am I not surprised at all?" Andrew smiled contemptuously. Compared with S.H.I.E.L.D., the American military is more domineering. It attacks whoever it wants, treating itself as the boss of the earth. Spread the news that the military is going to bomb this place, and make a final harvest. This disaster should almost be over. Of course, before it ends, we must teach the military a lesson. Andrew sent an anonymous voice to the editor-in-chief Jameson, and then he ordered, Trask, go back to the spacecraft and prepare your big toys. That's not a big toy, that's my trump card. Trask was a little excited, and immediately gave up his hatred and flew towards the spaceship in the sky. Hatred number 4 roared on the ground, but there was nothing he could do about it. I hate flying robots. Abomination number 4 cursed and rushed toward Frank. Frank was good at attacking but not defensively. He was surrounded by 2 abominations and was immediately in danger. When Barton, who was in charge of the overall situation, saw this, he quickly jumped to a nearby building to help Frank. They can't stop those monsters. Fortunately, the fighter jets are coming soon. General Ross put down the communicator and said excitedly. Betty was shocked when she heard this and hurriedly shouted, Bruce is still down there. Don't mention that useless piece of trash. General Ross cursed unhappily, thinking that Banner could deal with those monsters, but he turned out to be a funny character. Betty cried with tears in her eyes, Dad, you can't do this. General Ross snorted and was too lazy to answer. He picked up the communicator and prepared to inform Norman that Iron Man and others should leave. Ordinary civilians and those street heroes are not important, but big capitalists like Norman and Tony, even General Ross would not dare to kill them easily. The United States is a capital society after all. At this moment, there was a loud bang, and a huge green figure covered with muscles landed from the sky on Broadway. The flames behind him made him look like a devil or a god. The visitor was none other than the reborn Hell Vanguard General Hulk. He clenched his fists and roared at Blonsky, who was beating Dr. Banner. The sound caused cracks in the surrounding glass. Hulk's roar alarmed everyone. When everyone saw Hulk, they were stunned at first, and then overjoyed. This angry look, mighty body, and violent momentum. After identification, this is the real Hulk, not the previous one. Counterfeit. Dr. Banner, who was beaten into a pig's head by Blonsky, was equally happy when he saw Hulk appear, and even wanted to cry a little. He had never missed Hulk so much. You finally came. Blonsky was so excited that he threw Dr. Banner aside and rushed towards Hulk with a bang. Hulk rushed forward bravely, and soon, the 2 huge figures collided hard, and a circular air wave roared out. Different from the last time, this time, it was Blonsky who retreated. His strength was not comparable to Hulk. Hulk roared and punched Blonsky hard in the face. Blonsky flew backwards and fell to the ground, and several bloody teeth fell out of his mouth. This made Blonsky very angry. Just as he was about to get up, Hulk ran over and kicked him hard in the head. Blonsky hurriedly rolled to avoid it. Hulk saw this, grabbed Blonsky's neck and calves with both hands, and threw him out and hit the car next to him. Boom, the car was directly flattened. Hulk scolded disdainfully, weak chicken. I am the strongest. Blonsky roared angrily, got up and punched Hulk hard on the cheek. Hulk did not dodge, and hit the side of Blonsky's face with the same punch. With 2 booms, the 2 of them tilted their heads and flew out and fell to the ground. Then Hulk shook his head, got up from the ground and rushed towards Blonsky. Blonsky was knocked down by Hulk as soon as he got up. Then Hulk fired his bow from left to right and hit Blonsky's head with his fists one after another. Blonsky roared and threw Hulk away and kicked him hundreds of meters away. Just like that, the 2 big guys were going back and forth, fighting fiercely on the street. The surrounding cars and buildings quickly collapsed and shattered under their terrifying power. Generally speaking, Hulk has the advantage. He surpasses Blonsky in strength, defense, and self-healing ability. Blonsky can only rely on experience and skills to support himself. This is the real Hulk. Nick Fury, General Ross and others nodded. As for Dr. Banner, hey, let's not mention it. Why not use weapons but have to fight hand to hand? Andrew shook his head. It seemed that Hulk would have to be taught how to use weapons in the future. It would look good to punch to the flesh, but hitting him until dawn might not kill Blonsky, who could heal himself. Andrew stood up, ready to end everything. With the threat of the military, we have harvested another wave of souls, that's almost it. On the street, Jessica Jones, who was rescuing people, looked at the earth-shattering battle in the distance and sighed with some horror. It's too scary. I think if they keep fighting, they can tear down Manhattan. Don't. A lot of people will die that way. Gwen shook her head. She sighed and said, we are still too weak. I used to think that I was quite strong, but now I realize that I am just a frog in the well. Jessica sighed and said, that big green monster should be the strongest in New York, right? Definitely not. The strongest in New York is a kung fu master. Gwen said with some pride that that man was her boyfriend. By the way, why hasn't Andrew shown up yet? Jessica looked suspicious. Kung fu master. Real or fake? Of course it's a lie. The strongest man in New York is the Ghost Rider, the handsome and cool Ghost Rider. Sky's voice came from the communicator. She was a huge fan of Ghost Rider. Gwen was about to speak when she suddenly found that the battlefield had stopped. To be precise, the four abominations had stopped. They no longer fought Wolverine, no longer chased the old Green Goblin, and no longer besieged Frank. They all moved towards looking in the direction of Dr. Banner. They are not looking at Dr. Banner, they are looking at the handsome young man in a trench coat next to Dr. Banner. It is worth mentioning that after this figure appeared, Luo Shan's live broadcast was directly interrupted, and the audience in front of the TV could no longer see the live scene. Seeing Andrew, Dr. Banner couldn't help but backed away in fear. He vaguely remembered Hulk's beating. Andrew smiled and said, don't worry, you are a funny character now, I won't hit you. Dr. Banner was very dissatisfied. Funny character. I am a scientist, not a funny character. At this time, four abominations surrounded Andrew. They knew very well that this one was more powerful than the Hulk, and they needed to join forces to defeat each other. Andrew ignored the four abominations and asked Dr. Banner, I have a question. Dr. Banner, can you change back to your original appearance? Of course. Dr. Banner nodded first, and then asked in confusion, wait, how do you change back? In the past, when Hulk was around, Dr. Banner would return to normal as long as it returned to the depths of his consciousness, but now that Hulk is gone, Dr. Banner doesn't know how to change back. It seems there is no way to go back. Andrew patted Dr. Banner's shoulder sympathetically. You're probably going to break up with your girlfriend because the size doesn't match. Dr. Banner became Spartan, and he shouted anxiously, there must be a way to change back, there must be a way. On the other side, Jessica looked at Andrew and asked curiously, who is that person? Why are the four big monsters surrounding him? Gwen said excitedly, because the four monsters are afraid of him. He is the kung fu master I mentioned. Only when the four monsters join forces can they dare to fight him. Real or fake? Jessica didn't believe it. She looked at it carefully and said, speaking of which, this guy is quite handsome. Sky also said, I think so too, it's in line with my aesthetics. Gwen said hurriedly, don't mess around, that's my boyfriend. Jessica and Sky were stunned for a moment, and then looked disdainful. No wonder they had been praising each other before, they turned out to be their boyfriends. Oh, this guy really knows how to pretend. Tony cursed unhappily, like people always repel each other, especially since he can't pretend to be the other person at all. Howard sneered, if someone has strength, it's not called pretending. If you don't have the strength, it's called pretending. Some people shine brilliantly just by standing there. Psylocke glanced at Tony and said with disdain, some people, even if they use a booster pad, even if they bring their own music when they appear, even if they keep talking, no one still cares about them. Quote. Tony glared at Psylocke, sister, do you know that your path is narrow? Also, I don't use heightening pads, they are called heightening boots, which is uneducated. It's stable now. Notify the military immediately and ask them not to bomb Broadway. The hate is over. Nick Fury is overjoyed. The Hulk arrives, only to make the situation a little better, and Andrew Wong arrives, declaring that this disaster is about to end. There is no way, Andrew Wong is so powerful. Since you are so eager to die, I will help you. By the way, I will lend you a gun. At this time, four abominations had surrounded him. Andrew raised his hand and sucked a rifle on the ground into his hand. Then, the rifle quickly deformed and looked like a roaring demon. Gun. Everyone was a little confused. What did King Andrew want to do? While that gun is cool, rifles can't kill abominations. In fact, neither rifles nor missiles can kill them. However, the abominations felt a pressure from the gun. They roared and pounced on Andrew from 4 directions at the same time like 4 of the most ferocious beasts. Andrew didn't say much. He raised the gun and flicked it. With a bang, a burning hellfire bullet roared out, drew an arc in the air and shot into the head of Hate number 2 from the side. Then, the hellfire bullet penetrated from the other side of the head of Abomination number 2, penetrating the heads of Abomination number 3, Abomination number 4, and Abomination number 5 in an arc. Finally, the hellfire bullet circled in the air and shot into Andrew's head. If I were to be shot to death, that would be a masterpiece. Andrew smiled and held the bullet between 2 fingers. At the same time, the 4 abominations fell down at the same time with expressions of disbelief. Their heads and souls had been burned by hellfire, which was unprecedented before. The reason for the blood flying out. Everyone opened their mouths wide, as if they could swallow an egg. What the hell? Why can bullets turn? Also, what kind of bullet is so powerful that it can kill even an abomination instantly? That is hatred, hatred that makes everyone powerless. Also, how about you try some tricks? Are the haters shameless? Why do you need to use dozens of tricks to solve a problem that can be solved with 1 trick? I can make hundreds of millions of dollars in 1 second, okay. Andrew threw away the rifle. Seeing everyone's blank faces, he said seriously, times have changed. We must believe in science. Science, your sister. Everyone complained at the same time, your broken gun and broken bullets are not scientific at all, okay. A bunch of rotten wood. With a look of contempt on his face, Andrew turned and left. Everyone watched him leave. When he disappeared, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It was time to run away, and it was time to continue fighting. After Andrew left, the live broadcast signal was restored again. Luo Shan, who was a little frightened by the strength of her boss, reacted and started reporting again. It's really too powerful. It's a pity that he doesn't obey the command. Nick Fury sighed, thinking of something, and said, bullet turns. I remember which killer organization this is, right? Hill, let someone investigate this killer organization. If they have nothing to do with Andrew Wong, recruit them and find out the secret of the bullets turning. If they don't accept the recruitment, destroy them directly. Quote. Quote. A certain killer organization, is this called being shot while lying down? Jessica complained to Gwen, Kung Fu Master. This is obviously a gun master, okay. It's so cool, I will prepare a rifle in the future. Gwen gritted her teeth. How many things does that fool hide from me? Sky suddenly said, Gwen, he is not your boyfriend, right? You fell in love with him and were afraid that we would compete with you, so you deliberately said he was your boyfriend, right? Can it still be like this? Jessica was stunned for a moment, and then said with disdain, Gwen, it turns out you are also a bad girl. Quote. Gwen said I really want to hit someone right now, some fool named Andrew Wong. The appearance of Andrew made Obadiah completely lose his will to fight. He shouted to Ivan, Ivan, let's go. If you don't leave, it will be too late. There is actually such a powerful person in this world. Ivan was also a little disinterested. He shouted to Tony, Tony Stark, the next time we meet, it will be your death. Tony snorted coldly. Don't do it next time, solve it now, coward, don't you dare. Ivan missed Tony's provocative plan. He released a large number of smoke bombs around him and fled away with Obadiah. When the Winter Soldier saw this, he abandoned Psylocke and ran away from the sewers. Psylocke was just a mercenary, so naturally he had no interest in chasing him. Howard wanted to chase him, but the suit was not suitable for going into the sewers, and he had mysophobia. At this time, Tony stopped in front of Howard and shouted, Who are you? If you don't explain clearly today, don't even think about leaving. Don't even think about leaving. Howard was so angry that he slapped Tony on the head and cursed, Are you active now? Your father has been killed for more than 10 years, why haven't you been so active? You spend all your time living and drinking, everywhere. Picking up girls, do you know how tragic your father's death was? Tony, who was beaten, was originally angry, but Howard's words shocked him. He asked in disbelief, My dad was killed. Didn't he die in a car accident? A car accident. A top SHIELD agent died in a car accident. Do you have any brains? Howard gave Tony 2 more blows on the head and cursed, Your father was grabbed by the head and smashed to death, idiot. Yes, he is a top agent, there is no way he would die in a car accident. Tony's eyes turned red instantly, and he roared, who killed my dad? Tell me. Why are you shouting so loudly? Do you know that you are very unfilial? You are almost 40 and you don't have any children. So forget it. The problem is that you wear a shabby battle suit every day and go around trying to die. Howard kicked Tony to the ground and cursed loudly. Do you know that if you die, the Stark family will be extinct? Howard wants to climb up and beat you down below. Tony was so confused by the scolding that he sat on the ground and shouted, whether the Stark family has any descendants is none of your business, who the hell are you? When you find the person who killed your father, I will tell you who I am. Howard was so angry that he snorted coldly, activated his suit and flew towards the spaceship in the sky. Frank shook his head and followed him back to the spaceship. Tony wanted to chase him, but was stopped by Psylocke. Mr. Stark, who is almost 40 and still can't give birth to a child, it's very dangerous up there. Please don't seek death. It's not that I can't give birth, I just don't want to give birth. Tony shouted angrily. He recalled everything before and found that he was not angry at all when he was beaten by the other party, but instead felt warm. Is it possible that I have any special hobbies? Tony shuddered. He hurriedly called Nick Fury and shouted, Cyclops, you must give me an explanation. How did my father die? Putting aside Tony, who has special hobbies, the four hate death, and only the last one is left as an enemy, which is Blonsky, who is being beaten by the Hulk and flying around. However, Blonsky did not give up and fought with Hulk angrily. He is a true warrior and will never give up until the last moment. At this time, Wolverine, Dr. Banner, Barton and others gathered around, preparing to completely eliminate Blonsky and end this battle. That is the property of the military. You are not allowed to kill him. When General Ross saw this, he immediately shouted on the gunship. As soon as he finished shouting, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Patton couldn't help complaining. Are you planning to betray someone or make a mistake? Hulk naturally ignored General Ross and beat Blonsky to death. Patton used the communicator to ask Nick Fury, Director, what should we do? Nick Fury said, don't kill the abomination, capture him. As for the rest, I will discuss it with the military. Good. Patton was about to take action. At this moment, 6 Raptor fighter jets flew towards this direction from a distance. Nick Fury was stunned. Didn't the military cancel the bombing? The military was not here to bomb Broadway. Their target was the Reverse Cross spacecraft in the sky. They loudly warned, you have violated American airspace. Land immediately for inspection, otherwise we will launch an attack. Trask and others on the spacecraft all laughed, and Trask replied simply, get out. While shouting, Trask activated the Magneto device installed on the spacecraft. This device is round in appearance and has similar functions to Magneto. It is a derivative technology of the Sentinel robot. After acquiring new technology from Trask Industries, Trask made rapid progress, and within a few years, he would be able to create a true Sentinel robot. Trask's answer made the military very dissatisfied, and a general ordered, bomb it down. After receiving the order, 6 Raptor fighter jets pressed the buttons at the same time, and 6 air-to-air missiles with long white tails shot towards the anti-cross spacecraft. Let you see what real technology is. Trask snorted coldly, and the ring device in front of him rotated rapidly, and a powerful magnetic force enveloped the 6 missiles. Immediately afterwards, 6 missiles drew a circle in the air and blasted towards the Raptor along the original path. The Raptor fighter jet hurriedly avoided, but could not avoid the air-to-air missile at all. The next second, 6 huge fireballs appeared in the sky. Everyone was stunned. Why did this scene look so familiar? Has this happened before? Magneto, Nick Fury, General Ross and others screamed, and Nick Fury immediately sent people to the isolated island prison to check whether Magneto had escaped. The island prison is a prison specially used by S.H.I.E.L.D. to detain felons and super-powered criminals. It is located under the sea. Magneto and the captured mutants are all imprisoned there. Magneto even has a private plastic glass box, located on the right side of the isolated island prison, connected by a plastic corridor and not inside the prison. The Peace Knights are peace-loving, but that doesn't mean the Peace Knights are easy to bully. Accompanied by this metallic sound, the spacecraft quickly took off, and soon it disappeared from satellite and radar monitoring. The military general yelled, but there was nothing he could do. The other party had Magneto's ability, and it would be useless even if he found him. This world is getting stranger and stranger. Barton shook his head, and Wolverine, Dr. Banner and others joined in the siege of Blonsky. Hulk was a little unhappy and kicked the car next to him away. A bunch of weaklings, Hulk cursed, turned around and ran away. He was not interested in besieging Blonsky with others. After all, the other party was just his defeated general. He, Hulk, wanted to save face. Everyone was dumbfounded and could only bite the bullet and continue to attack Blonsky. Barton glanced at Dr. Banner and couldn't help but sigh. Dr. Banner was very dissatisfied. What's that look in your eyes? Looking at the weaklings in your eyes, you obviously look the same. Why are your strengths so different? Wolverine said with disdain. One is a super macho guy and the other is a funny character. They are not on the same level at all. I'm not a funny character. In order to prove himself, Dr. Banner threw himself at Blonsky. The next second, he flew back faster than before and hit the ground with a bang. You are the funny character. Tony flies past Dr. Banner and joins the fight, while at the same time, the Quinjet that Nick Fury was talking about finally arrives to support. With the efforts of everyone, Blonsky was finally defeated and fell to the ground unconscious. The Rebellion of Abomination has officially ended, and the surrounding area has become a ruin, with flames and broken buildings everywhere. It is worth mentioning that in addition to Quinjet fighters, there were also 3 approaching TV station helicopters in the sky at this moment. At the same time, many reporters were filming outside the cordon, vying for first-hand information. Western reporters are always very fast. Blonsky is a member of our military and he belongs to us. General Ross stepped off the helicopter and shouted to the SHIELD people. Nick Fury's sarcastic voice came from the speaker. General Ross, I think you should deal with the reporters and the military court first. Journalists and courts-martial. General Ross was stunned. Just as he was about to say something, a large number of reporters gathered around and asked General Ross, why did your military create such a terrifying monster? Did you get permission from Congress? Hatred has killed so many people. Should your military give an explanation to the public? Will your military be responsible for the losses here? Excuse me, apart from bringing disaster, what other role does the American military have? When General Ross heard these questions, his expression changed drastically. Why do they know so much and in detail? General Ross knew that he was finished. He threw up his head and spit out a mouthful of blood, and fell straight down. The reporters were startled at first, and then frantically took pictures of the fallen General Ross, with no intention of rescuing him. Hate was big news, and so was General Ross. Because there were too many reporters, Betty didn't notice what was going on over there. She ran to Dr. Banner and asked worriedly, Bruce, how are you doing now? Dr. Banner opened his mouth and said bitterly, Betty, I don't seem to be able to change back. Betty was dumbfounded. Could she still get married like this? After being reborn in hell, Demon King Andrew was in a good mood. He also earned tens of thousands of souls, and his work was not in vain. In addition, as before, a new world merged into this world. Obviously, his previous speculation was correct. The world merged. This matter is really related to a big event. Is it some kind of force of fate, deflection of fate or something like that? Andrew touched his chin, stood up and walked outside the hall. A big-headed man was standing at the door looking at everything in hell with surprise and longing in his eyes. Andrew looked at Dr. Stern, the big boss, and asked, You don't seem sad. Why are you sad? I feel super good right now. The big boss turned around and said, I was too stupid before to pursue those dirty fame and fortunes. There is only one thing worth pursuing in this world, and that is knowledge. The big boss said gratefully to Andrew, Master Demon King, thank you for bringing me to hell. This place is filled with countless wonderful new knowledge. I want to study them carefully. Knowledge. Andrew was a little surprised. Not only did the big boss's head become bigger, but his personality also changed. He asked, Have you gained any special abilities after the mutation? I have the psychic ability to control others, but the other persons must be weak. The big boss said, In addition, my intelligence has increased several times compared to before. This is my biggest gain. Lord Demon King, I can study everything you want to study for you. Andrew said, Very good, you go and study how to cure diseases, especially those that are incurable. The big boss said excitedly. No problem, I will not only cure all human diseases, but also make human beings immortal and evolve into another kind of life. Human immortality. Are you trying to bankrupt me? Andrew complained, and he said angrily, this is not allowed to be studied. The big boss was a little disappointed, and then said, it doesn't matter. There are a lot of things worth studying here anyway. This is not hell, this is my paradise. You study slowly, and I will build a laboratory for you. The more things you study, the more rewards I will give you. Andrew nodded. With the big boss's ability, he would definitely be able to bring him a lot of souls. Andrew can never have too much of the soul. The fighting on Broadway quickly spread across the country and even the world. People were very angry and continued to condemn the military. Some people even went to march outside the White House. President Ellis first stated that he was not aware of the military's research on hate. At the same time, he assured the public that the matter would be investigated thoroughly. There is no doubt that General Ross will be sent to a military court by the military. However, he will not have any major problems, let alone go to jail. He will only be left idle for a period of time. The reason is simple. The military needs a hardliner. In the future, they will even support General Ross to become Secretary of State to fight against increasingly powerful superheroes. Putting this aside, after negotiations, Blonsky finally fell into the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D., but the other 4 abominable corpses were taken away by the military. As for the Hulk's blood in the laboratory, a small part was taken away by the men in black, and the rest was completely destroyed. S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military directly removed the floor without wasting a drop. In addition, Natasha failed to catch up with the man in black and escaped. Nick Fury was very concerned about this matter and sent a large number of agents to hunt down the man in black, the man with the metal arm, Obadiah, and Ivan. Of course, we all know there's no way Nick Fury can catch these people. After several days of trying, Dr. Banner confirmed that he could not change back to his original appearance, which made him very frustrated. Finally, under the persuasion of S.H.I.E.L.D., he joined the Avengers team and became the new Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D. He will help Dr. Banner deal with the military, and at the same time set up a laboratory to help Dr. Banner recover as much as possible. Betty did not leave Dr. Banner, but their marriage was put on hold indefinitely. Norman Osborn barely became famous after this war, and the public knew that there was another superhero. Jameson, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, even gave him the title Green Goblin. However, Norman's reputation is not good. On the one hand, he is too ugly and too old. On the other hand, his unscrupulous attacks make the people very dissatisfied. Coupled with the fact that the human enhancement potion basically failed, Osborn Group's stock price not only did not rise, but also fell again. Norman was so anxious that he put out fires in the boardroom every day. The board of directors has the right to remove Norman. Capital is always in charge in the United States. In this disaster, apart from the people and General Ross, there is another person who is unlucky, that is Justin Hammer. He was arrested for harboring wanted criminals, illegally manufacturing weapons, endangering national security and other serious crimes. What awaits him will be a long prison life. Justin Hammer feels innocent about this. The military took the lead in this matter, okay. Also, it was those 2 fools who caused the trouble, and I didn't know anything. No matter what Hammer shouted, he could not change the fate of being taken advantage of. Andrew took advantage of the plummeting share price of Hammer Industries and announced the acquisition of Hammer Industries. Andrew didn't want to change his job to be an arms dealer, he just wanted the production line of Hammer Industries, which would be useful for Rebirth in Hell. After the acquisition is successful, Andrew will split up Hammer Industries, auction it off, and secretly transfer the production lines. According to estimates, Andrew will not only not lose money on this business, but will also make a profit. After all, Hammer Industries is valuable. Quite a few. On this day, Pepper returned to the Malibu villa. She saw Tony, who was operating in front of the holographic projection, and said angrily, "Young master, I have already bought the space station toy you want to buy. Susan is very powerful. For the money, it's a bit higher than expected. It doesn't matter. The Rebirth Group's space station includes artificial gravity technology and space shuttle technology. No matter how much money you spend, it is worth it." Tony opened the holographic projection and said, "Moreover, Dr. Reed's experiment is very meaningful. If successful, it can cure hundreds of human diseases." Pepper asked, "I don't understand. It's just an experiment. Why should I buy the space station? Isn't it more cost-effective to rent it once? When have I, Tony Stark, rented anything?" Tony said arrogantly, "I have other uses for the space station. Military satellites and space stations can better protect the world. It's about protecting the world again." Pepper shook her head. She found that Tony was becoming more and more responsible, completely different from before. Tony thought of something and asked, "By the way, have you seen that Andrew Wong?" "I haven't seen him. Like someone else, he has been away from the company for a long time." Pepper sneered, and then said regretfully, "It's a pity. I originally wanted to ask him for an autograph. Signature. You asked that kid for his signature." Tony's nose was almost crooked with anger. "As my woman, you actually asked for autographs from other men. I, Iron Man, don't want to lose face, right? Can't you?" Pepper said. "He is handsome, can get angry, and can do kung fu. If I don't ask for his autograph, why don't I ask for it from you?" Tony said unconvinced. "I'm handsomer than him. Although I can't get angry, I can make a suit. As for kung fu, I'm practicing Wing Chun recently. Sooner or later, I will beat him. Your Wing Chun is not as good as mine." Pepper looked contemptuous. She walked up to Tony, pointed to the arc reactor on his chest, and said, "Tony, the steel fragments in your body have been taken away by Magneto. There is no need for you to wear this anymore, let alone when you're a superhero. Do you know how worried I am about you?" Tony was very moved and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." "I'm not at ease, not at all, Tony. With Andrew Wong here, the world is very safe, so can't you just be a billionaire and a super scientist?" Pepper shouted, "Why do we have to go to the battlefield? How can any billionaire go to the front line every day?" "Yes, Andrew Wong, Norman Osborn, don't be angry, Pepper, I know what you mean, but Andrew Wong is unreliable. He does everything based on his mood." Tony said, "Give me a few more years, and when the Earth is completely peaceful, I will throw away the arc reactor to accompany you." "How many years, Tony? I'm worried you won't survive that day." Pepper shook his head in disappointment and said, "I'm going to take a rest. You can keep an eye on the Cosmic Storm project by yourself. I'm too busy recently and have no time." After saying that, Pepper turned and walked towards the bedroom, and Tony sighed. Being a superhero is very dangerous, but someone must protect the Earth, and that person can only be him, Tony Stark. Although that guy is really strong, he has no sense of responsibility. He is not a superhero. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Let's find the enemy who killed his father first." Tony shook his head and reopened the holographic projection, which showed the car accident information provided by S.H.I.E.L.D. In fact, S.H.I.E.L.D. also suspected that there was something wrong with Howard's death, but they could not find any useful clues and had to give up in the end. The lack of clues may not mean that the murderer did it perfectly. It may also be that there is a problem within S.H.I.E.L.D. Otherwise, the murderer would not have known my father's route of action and would have ambushed him on the road to steal the serum. Tony analyzed it for a while and said to Jarvis, "Jarvis, invade the S.H.I.E.L.D. system. I want S.H.I.E.L.D.'s internal information." Jarvis said, "Yes, Mr. Stark. No matter who the murderer is, I will make him pay the price." Tony gritted his teeth and said that although he and Howard had a bad relationship, Howard was always his biological father, and he must avenge this. After Dr. Reed made a comeback, he took out a loan to invest in the Baxter building. He believed that one day he would be able to buy the building. In the office, Dr. Reed was adjusting the instruments. Seeing that he was a little distracted, Ben asked, "Did you dream about your future son again?" "Strictly speaking, he cannot be counted as my son for the time being. If I recover Susan, he will be my son. If I cannot recover him, he will become Andrew Wang's son." Dr. Reed said, "However, I really dreamed of him last night. He said that if there was no Andrew Wong, I would get back together with Susan because of the Cosmic Storm project. He told me to seize this opportunity. If it fails, Susan will belong to Andrew Wong through and through. Then you have to work hard." Ben said, "By the way, your son is so powerful and can even travel through time, why don't you give him more help?" I also asked him, and he said that there is a very powerful bald female in this era. He can't get through it, so he can only talk to me through the trajectory of fate. Dr. Reed said. For him, I must seize this opportunity to get Susan back. It's not for him, it's for Susan. Ben sneered. As Dr. Reed's best and only friend, he knew very well that Dr. Reed had never forgotten Susan. How do you plan to pursue her? Do you want me to give you some advice? I am a man who is about to get married. Ben said, flashing his engagement ring as if to show off. No need, Susan will get back together with me in the original timeline, it must be because of my talent. Dr. Reed said confidently. In other words, my experiment will definitely succeed this time and I will become a great hero. Real or fake? Ben looked suspicious. He thought for a while and nodded. It's not completely unreasonable. The reason why Susan fell in love with you in the first place was because of your talent. Otherwise, she would definitely choose Doom. After all, Doom looks better than you or handsome and richer than you. The last half of the sentence can be omitted. Dr. Reed rolled his eyes and mustered up his energy to perfect the instrument. He wanted to use his talents to conquer Susan again. That is to say, Dr. Reed's son is not here, otherwise he will definitely bang his head against the wall. Neither of these two guys really understands women. It is better to expect a meteorite to fall from the sky and smash King Andrew back to hell. At noon, Andrew took Gwen shopping in Manhattan. Andrew looked at the blocked road ahead and shook his head. With the efficiency of the United States, it is estimated that it will take until next year to repair Broadway Avenue. It is very possible that the Statue of Liberty, which was demolished by Magneto last year, has not yet been rebuilt. What is even worse is that the budget has been spent. Gwen nodded. She thought of something and asked Andrew dissatisfied, "Aren't you a kung fu master? Why did you suddenly become a gun master?" Andrew looked straight at Gwen and asked, "How do you know about this? The TV station didn't broadcast it." Gwen's eyes suddenly flickered, and she said, "I heard what others said, don't change the subject, answer me quickly." "Aren't you still changing the subject?" Andrew smiled and said. Just as Gwen was about to say something, gunshots and vehicle collisions suddenly came from the distance. Both of them were stunned. What happened again? Andrew pulled Gwen back to the sidewalk and said, "Safety first, safety first." Gwen rolled her eyes. She couldn't think of any creature on Earth that could harm Andrew. At this time, several sports cars ignored traffic regulations and rushed towards this direction. They were chased by many cars. The two sides chased and fired at the same time, just like a Hollywood movie. The people were frightened and ran away from the vehicles. At the same time, they cursed in their hearts. "Come on, can you be quiet for a few days? They seem to be from S.H.I.E.L.D. It's such a big scene." Andrew was a little surprised. At this time, a convertible red sports car passed in front of him. In the sports car sat a beautiful woman with a hot figure and a heroic appearance. Andrew was stunned when he saw this beauty. Younger Angelina. Andrew squinted his eyes. There is indeed a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe played by Angelina, and she is a big shot, Tina of the Eternals. Isn't Tina suffering from eternal demon syndrome? Why are you racing here? At this time, a car chased behind the red sports car. The agent in the passenger seat stretched his body out of the window and shot at the woman in the sports car. The woman in the sports car didn't panic at all. She looked in the rearview mirror, controlled the steering wheel with one hand, and swung back a modified gun with the other hand. Bang! A bullet shot out quickly, turned around in the air and flew into the window of the car behind. The driver's head was shot through on the spot, and blood spattered everywhere. The driver died. The car lost control and hit a nearby vehicle. The agent who fired the shot was killed on the spot. It turns out it's not Tina, it's Firefox. I just used arc ballistics. Why did the Assassins League really escape? Andrew suddenly realized that League of Assassins was a very good movie, and the bullet time and arc ballistics in it could often be seen in certain novels. Bullet turns. When Spider-Woman Gwen saw the rounded bullet, her eyes lit up and she asked Andrew, "Andrew, are those people who escaped related to you? Does it count that I've seen their movies?" Andrew was a little embarrassed, and Gwen looked confused and couldn't understand what Andrew was talking about. Andrew said, "They are members of the Assassin Brotherhood. The Assassin Brotherhood was founded 1,000 years ago when a weaver discovered a destiny loom, and the threads it weaved could form names through a special method. The mission of the Brotherhood is to kill the owner of the name, because those people will cause destruction to the world. To put it simply, they are a group of destiny assassins. Quote. Gwen was a little dumbfounded. Just because the name appears on the loom, you want to kill the other party. This is their belief, kill one person and save 1,000. Andrew shook his head. He was a little interested in the Destiny textile. He didn't know if it was genuine. In addition, the Assassin Brotherhood had a potion that could help people heal in a short time. He was also interested. Yelena, gather a team of Black Widows and go and snatch the loom of destiny from me. Andrew ordered to Yelena with his consciousness, where is the textile factory? Following the chase route and searching back using Google Maps, it was easy to find the location. Yelena didn't talk nonsense and immediately agreed, yes, boss. Andrew ordered, don't kill anyone. In addition, the Assassin Brotherhood has a recovery potion. Try to get it. Clear. Yelena nodded and summoned the Black Widows to take action. For them, who often destroyed demon believers, dealing with S.H.I.E.L.D. was like returning to the novice village. Kill one person to save 1,000. Human life is never a numbers game. Besides, who knows whether the prediction of the textile machine is accurate? Gwen obviously did not agree with the beliefs of the Assassin Brotherhood. Andrew did not say much. He said, everyone has their own ideas. Let's go. They have already left. There is no need for us to stay here. After Andrew left, the chase became more intense and even caused a big car accident. Police Chief George Stacy looked at the unscrupulous assassins and agents on the screen and couldn't help but cursed, these two groups of guys are all fools. Why is there so much going on in New York? George sighed. It is worth mentioning that his current position is very stable. The reason is very simple. No one is willing to take over this hot potato. Director George secretly made up his mind. The New York Police Department needs its own power, extraordinary power. Putting aside Director George's thoughts for the moment, Sloan, the leader of the Assassin Brotherhood, a white-haired old black man, ran away while constantly cursing words starting with F. 1 second, they were eating prime steak, drinking expensive red wine, and thinking about how to spend money in the textile factory. The next second, S.H.I.E.L.D. rushed in and surrounded them, demanding that they surrender immediately. Naturally, the Assassin Brotherhood would not surrender. They chose to break out. Unfortunately, S.H.I.E.L.D. was too powerful. In the end, only a dozen of their members escaped, and the rest were either killed or captured. What's worse, the textile machine of destiny lost. Sloan used to be a loyal believer in the loom of destiny. However, when his name appeared on the loom, he chose to abandon his mission and become a real killer boss, accepting assassination missions on the black market and letting his assassins complete them. To be honest, this is a very good deal, because there is no need to pay his assassins, and Sloan keeps all the profits alone. Over the years, he has made a lot of money, and he often worries that one day the person will die and the money will not be there. Spend all the money. Unfortunately, all this has been completely broken today. Unless the loom of destiny is recovered, the good days of making money while lying down will be completely gone. S.H.I.E.L.D., why did they suddenly come to us? Sloan gritted his teeth. At this moment, a Quinjet dropped from the front, and then, a 6-barreled machine gun appeared from underneath it and aimed at the fleeing Brotherhood members. Firefox, you're on the left and I'm on the right. Sloan's expression changed, and he hurriedly stood up and aimed his gun at the Quinjet. Firefox also made the same move. When the pilot on the Quinjet saw this scene, he couldn't help laughing and blew up the plane with his pistol. Do you think this was a movie? Sloan and Firefox didn't talk nonsense. They both turned on bullet time, and their hearts beat violently, reaching 400 beats per minute. The large amount of adrenaline made them extremely focused. In the eyes of Sloan and Firefox, everything around them became extremely slow, including the high-speed rotating turbine engine on the Quinjet. Then, the two men swung their guns at the same time, and the bullet passed through the fan blades of the turbine engine in an arc, hitting the most vulnerable part of the engine's core. Boom, boom, the two engines exploded at the same time. The Quinjet fell downwards with black smoke. The pilot was stunned. How could this be possible? A Quinjet fighter costing tens of millions of dollars was destroyed by 2 bullets. It's not so exaggerated to make a movie, okay. Because he was too shocked, the pilot failed to escape in time and turned into a ball of fire along with the Quinjet. The Assassin Brotherhood took the opportunity to continue to flee. The commander behind them, Level 8 Agent John Garrett, couldn't help but curse. The abilities of these guys are too terrifying, right? At this moment, heavy fog suddenly appeared on the street, and Sloane and others all disappeared in the fog. Garrett's expression changed slightly and he hurriedly asked everyone to stop. This was the ability of the mutant mist. As the Brotherhood of Assassins related to the Brotherhood of Mutants. Garrett wasn't about to give up. He asked police and agents to cordon off the area while calling for backup. On the other side, the appearance of the mist startled Sloane and others. At this moment, a voice came out of the mist. We are the Brotherhood of Mutants. You follow the red light in front of you. We will not harm you. Sloane hesitated and said, follow me. Everyone followed the red light and soon, they left the mist and came to an underground parking lot. Then, the mutant Misty with flowing hair and a mask came out from behind the pillar, pointed to the truck next to him and said, in the car. If you have some clothes, please change quickly and I will take you away. While Sloane was wary of his surroundings, he asked Misty, I don't remember that we have any relationship with mutants. What do you want to do? You will find out soon enough. Misty said. Sloane glanced at him, and went to the truck to change clothes with more than 10 escaped companions such as Firefox, Tinker, Butcher, Big Backhead, and Split Mouth. The assassins were stunned when they saw the clothes in the van. The clothes were hooded sweatshirts with the slogan, Mutants Must Register, printed on them. Sloane asked in shock, are you sure you didn't get the wrong clothes? Don't worry, no, Misty smiled mysteriously. Sloane glanced at him, stopped talking nonsense, and changed clothes with everyone else, put on his hood and mask. This way, Misty took everyone from the underground passage to the nearby shopping mall hall, where the recently popular Senator Kelly was calling on citizens to support the Mutant Registration Act. Sloane and others looked at each other. What is going on? Mutants turn against themselves. Although confused, Sloane and others did not leave. Under the leadership of Misty, they shouted the slogan, Mutants Must Register, which caused a burst of cheers from the surrounding people. Senator Kelly. After a while, a group of agents came here to check. When they saw Senator Kelly at the rally, they were stunned for a moment, and then went to look for targets elsewhere. Mutants and assassins can't hide here. Senator Kelly is a die-hard anti-mutant. Senator Kelly did not take the agents seriously. After the speech, he left with his staff and easily broke through the siege that Garrett had laid out so hard. Sloane and others breathed a sigh of relief. They looked at each other and prepared to escape from Senator Kelly. They did not want to be controlled by mutants, not to mention that these mutants were full of weirdness. At this moment, all the assassins felt weak at the same time. Their expressions changed. They struggled to stand up, but fell to the ground one after another and passed out. Mawu sneered beside him, want to leave? Have you asked our Brotherhood of Mutants? At the same time, Garrett, who had been searching to no avail, received another bad news. The textile factory was broken into by unknown forces, and the mysterious textile machine and several important prisoners were taken away. Hateful, John Garrett yelled angrily. This time, he lost miserably. Reborn in hell, Andrew looked at the destiny loom in front of him and said in surprise, it's actually the real thing. I didn't have much hope before. Yelena asked curiously, is this loom really related to fate? There is a mysterious wave on it, which means it is an extraordinary object. Andrew touched the loom and said, well done, Yelena. It is worth mentioning that the fluctuations on the destiny loom are very mysterious, and it will take even Andrew a while to study it clearly. Yelena said respectfully, serving boss is what we should do. Don't worry, I will never forget your contribution. Andrew smiled and asked, have you got the potion that speeds up recovery? Yelena nodded and said, I got it. We also asked the prisoners about the training methods of bullet time and arc ballistics. However, they said that only a few people can master these two stunts. Copy the method to all the Black Widows and see who is the lucky one. Andrew said, as for the formula of the recovery potion, leave it to the big boss and let him further upgrade the formula. Yelena nodded and left. Yes, boss. The Assassin Brotherhood in this world is really unlucky. It was destroyed by S.H.I.E.L.D. before it even showed its power, and I don't know which god it offended. Andrew shook his head and thought to himself, the loser actor probably won't have a chance to appear, but this may not be a bad thing for him. Senator Kelly's New York estate. Sloane and others woke up one after another and found themselves tied to a chair, with Senator Kelly standing in front of them. At the same time, 3 mutants, Toad, Big Steel Tooth, and Misty, stood beside them. I know you have a lot of doubts, and I think this way you will understand. Senator Kelly smiled, and his body fluctuated, changing from an old man in a suit to a blue-skinned woman with scales, none other than Mystique Raven. Mystique, Sloane exclaimed, are you too brave to pretend to be a senator? Senator Kelly, a die-hard anti-mutant, was replaced by Mystique a few months ago, which is why Misty and the others are following Senator Kelly. More than just pretending, Senator Kelly has been killed by me. Mystique smiled disdainfully and said, I have heard the name of the Assassin Brotherhood. You are quite capable. Unfortunately, you have offended S.H.I.E.L.D. We didn't mess with S.H.I.E.L.D. I still don't know why those lunatics came to our door. Sloane cursed with great frustration, and so did everyone else. It's true that if you just sit at home, disaster will come from the sky. Mystique asked. It's not important how you offended. What's important is, do you want to take back the Loom of Destiny and continue your mission? How do you know about the Destiny Machine? Sloane asked in shock. The Destiny Machine is the biggest secret of the Assassin Brotherhood. Outsiders have no idea. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. only found out about such a mysterious textile machine after breaking into the textile factory. What most people know about the Assassin Brotherhood is that bullets bend. It does not matter. Mystique said mysteriously that in fact, the information about the Assassin Brotherhood was asked by a mutant named Sleep in Sloane's dream. Sloane did not remember the situation in the dream. Yes, that's not important. What's important is that we must seize back the textile machine of destiny and continue our mission. Firefox shouted that she was the person in the Brotherhood who believed in the Loom of Destiny the most. Let's put it this way, if her name appeared on the loom, she would point the gun at her head immediately. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.